Okay, I know that I'm live. Alright. Hey guys. Okay. Give me a second. Let me get out of my whole romp on Destiny. Yeah, it'd probably be 10 times easier for me just to go ahead and utilize what I already have here. So let's do that. Let's just log into YouTube through here. Sorry, I have YouTube on the TV that I'm using, and I also have it on the PlayStation, so I'm trying to decide if I want to just use the TV and save the energy on the PlayStation, but I'm also communicating to people on the PlayStation, so I'm just going to try to figure out if I should just leave the PlayStation on and answer the messages that I have on there. Um, Part of my focus on content lately is sporadic and changing, kind of more so based on willpower. This last month's been really hard with me constantly going in and out of the hospital and just having constant medical issues. Um, so it's been a little bit difficult for me, and honestly, I've only been lucid, like able to even really interact with people over just like the last week, and my brain is still very foggy. I have not done been doing well these last few weeks. Few months. Really, it's been a hard year. Oh man, this year has been so hard. And I mean, that's kind of, I guess, where this whole focus kind of came from for this channel was to show the process, because there are a lot of Christian channels that focus on, reading the Bible or fellowshipping, doing Bible study or uplifting people. But I think that one of the things that I've been at least looking for in content, and what I appreciate when I see it in certain content that's created by pastors and other lay men and women that work for the church, is this idea that there's this humanity that is constantly being redefined within us and being challenged within us by society, by ourselves, by even our own associations with other Christians. And that there's this expectation upon us to be role models, to be examples, to be these kind of unbreakable idols and statues that honestly I feel like Christians are robbed when they're forced into that position. It's one thing to be naturally holy. If you don't have the proclivity to sin, then you are blessed. You have something that a lot of us really wish we had. And maybe perhaps if we had God from the beginning of our lives, we would not be this lost and we would not struggle as much as we do. But we didn't and we don't. We have to relearn so much of our life. And it's not easy just because you've been saved your whole life. You have to protect yourself. You have to build up the kingdom, build up its defenses. You have to make sure that you don't become a tyrant within your own land from the isolationist policies you adopt in order to protect your sense of individuality in relationship to the tribe of Christ. There are so many things that go into being a good Christian who continues to walk the right path, that it's not about, oh, as a sinner coming to Christ, you've had it so easy. I have moments where I get angry, and like so many people in society, we get angry about this concept of privilege. And to a certain extent, if I were to talk about privilege and give it validation as a system, then you could see that in the difference between those who have a strong church life and a strong church family and a strong religious habitual life that allows them to be insulated and protected in the Word of God and in the things that validate Christianity. For those of us who are surrounded by those who are unsaved, who are trying to figure out things on our own within this vacuum, we're trying to figure out things in the wilderness more accurately. it's painful, it's annoying, it's frustrating. You never really are sure if you're saved. You're never really sure if you're covered in the blood of Christ. You don't know if your sins are forgiven. You don't know if you're going to be punished for them. You don't know. 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 And on both sides, you don't know so much from the Christians I talk that have never, been on this side, and those of us who are still trapped on this side. Either way, the lack of knowledge, we never can know enough to feel secured in this life. And I think that's why the Lord says, sufficient unto the day is its own test and trials and, struggles. But ultimately, what I'm hoping this channel will be is a place for people to become vulnerable and open about this thing we call spirituality or metaphysics, metaphysical philosophy, if you want to call it that, rather than spiritualism or religion. Metaphysical philosophy and psychology. That's what we're into in this channel, and that is what we try to teach and educate people through. When we try to utilize the principles and aspects from the secular society with those of the religious, because honestly, one is submitted to the other. Imagination helps redefine that which has already been defined. So, if all spiritualism is just hoopla, metaphysical, whoopity doopity, blah blah blah, then it is of the imaginative quality and thus has a nature that is naturally going to supersede that of the physical world. The physical world is great for forcing control through overt systemized means, systematically devised means. Jeez, did that thing where my brain merges two words together. But yeah, when you live in a society that's constantly telling you need to be an individual, we care about your individuality, but in reality, all they do is create us to be collectivistic. And more so, we're too scared to be true individuals. We are individualized by what we aren't or by what we are assumed to be rather than what we actually are. And again, we're going to get into this because, again, I want to get into the topic of addiction and confession. So, I like women. I also have interaction to men at times. It's definitely not as strong as certain moments in my life, but I had to also be in a certain mindset, spiritual position, in a sort of conflicting environment by which those would be acted upon in different influences. There are times where I don't like any gender. In fact, most of the time I don't like any gender because the level of anxiety and trust that I have to have dealt with in order to interact with somebody of the other gender or even of my own is usually excessive. I don't trust most men that I know and live and meet because I don't trust them. I just can't. I don't meet many men that I feel collectivistically and even individualistically have reached a level of proof that I can trust them with certain things in my life. I can trust most men with certain things, but I only trust them to be men insofar as they are capable of being men. And I don't expect them even to be able to go that far. Might sound chauvinistic, but my expectations for women are even lower, and actually I usually base that off of the hypocrisy that I see within them. I meet a lot of women who preach one thing, do another. They say one thing and do another. Much in the same way, maybe perhaps the hypocritical and backsliding pastor is a great example of what the mind of a woman is like when she's devoted to one thing, but really in reality wants another. So I don't see much redeemable of either gender, or much to prefer either gender over the other. In terms of friendship, it's pretty even. I can be friends with either gender to very, very satisfying degrees. It's based off of the level of effort within the individual to be part of a community or a group. That determines how close I can be with them. And again, it doesn't have to be just romantic love. To a certain extent, because of how I romanticize my relationships in general, that by having a tribalistic mentality that is based off of assimilation and covenant relationships, there's a certain amount of romanticism to all of my relationships. All relationships by which there is a social contract that maintains them in a sense of agreement that allows me to bond with these people and to really expose my vulnerabilities and myself with them, there's going to be a certain romantic attachment that I hold towards them. Even if it's completely platonic, there will be a romanticism of our bonds and our experiences that is proportional to the subjective views and values that I hold at the time, and those develop because of the interaction I'm having with the person. I change because of the people who talk to me. So when I don't talk to people, when I don't interact with people, when I stay locked inside my room or in my haven, that is to protect myself, to insulate myself, and to prevent myself from being ideologically challenged and or socially challenged to become different, or to challenge myself and my own opinions and presuppositions. So the idea being with surrounding myself with people and constantly seeking to be in society, even if I am stubborn and at times seem like I'm not willing to play by the rules of society, is because though I am not playing by the rules of society, or though I may not formally or openly, overtly admit to wanting to be part of the group, I will weigh the pros and cons of group acceptance to that of the independent desire to strike out against the group, because it's not right to always strike out against the group, and in other times it's the only right thing to do. And sometimes the most moral thing to do is often not what the society says is moral. There are occasions where Christians should stand for things that society will not, and that even other Christians will not, and then other times where we shouldn't not stand for something, even though society's telling us to lay the hell off. It's hard walking a path of the Ubermach. But again, the Ubermach is created by a world that wants to serve itself. To try to be what Christ was, which was something above the Ubermach, this Superman, this mighty man, to be more than just a mighty man, to be a divine man, a sanctified man, a holy man, you have to do something more than just be. You have to be something more than just am. You have to will. You have to do. You have to could, should. You have to have a sense of variability and proficiency in every aspect of your life. And that struggle is hard. And I think that's where the idea of addictions and really come into play, because we medicate the pain away. Even from the start, what was the pain that Adam and Eve felt in the garden first? It was the longing of a lost separation that they did not understand the depths of in Christ. They were of an estate and of a state, an estate and a state that was of a higher sense than what we currently can tap into. We have to use drugs in order to even get to some aspects of what they felt, and in other aspects we have to get physically fit, other aspects we have to eat a perfect diet, other aspects we have to sit there and be educated to a certain proficiency. There were so many aspects which were natively in tune to our first ancestors, that was just a part of their instinct, a part of their native environment, and a part of their native genetic programming, that allowed them to be a different people than we are today. And we are still dividing ourselves and devolving into Nephilim. I believe in evolution insofar as microevolution is very provable and it's completely sufficient with the sin model of the world. As far as macroevolution is concerned, I believe in macroevolution through a metaphysical understanding of the relationship between time and light, and the relationship between perspective and dimensional physics. So as you lose your rootedness and dimensionality, you lose your sense of time in respective to that position in the dimension. So if you're moving the speed of light, you're technically fringing on the realms of breaking this dimensional boundary. As you do so, as you transcend from the fourth dimension, that's technically where we're at. We see the third dimension because we are fourth dimensional beings. Technically, if we start to expand into the fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensions, we would start losing our sense of physicality and our sense of dimensionality or temporality, and we would start fusing into a sense of constant stream, constant essence, and what we think and what we desire would be instantaneous. This is, I think, why we get to the point where, as you really get into spiritualism, you start realizing just how little grounds you have to fuck up, but how much you have to friggle with the lines of things. And that was purposeful. I purposely cussed and then say that other thing. There are times where we are allowed to do extraordinary things, and there are other times where you ain't gonna accomplish much, buddy. And it ain't because God ain't with you. It's because physically, realistically, metaphysically, It is not. It's not the time for that. There's a time for stopping the sun in the middle of a battle, and there's a time where doing that stuff ain't going to work out well for anybody involved, even if it does get you the temporary benefit of time and space and social acceptance. So there's always this idea that we have to balance ourselves, even in the church, among our own pastors, because there are false prophets, there are false shepherds, there are antichrists, there are so much to lead you astray from within the gates of your own pasture. That before you even step into the wilderness as one of the 1%, that you already got a lot to fight with. So 99% are constantly battling, and they should be constantly battling. If you are not being challenged in your church, you're both blessed or maybe not. I don't know, I can't speak on such things, but I can anticipate that we should always be wary of security. And when people say peace and safety, then comes sudden destruction. We are a nation in of ourselves. Every individual, every couple, every family, every friendship, every friend group, every community, we are all representative of the nations that we inhabit. And what we do and how we choose to interact on the microcosm affects the macrocosm. So again, I get down to this idea that, addiction is progressive, it's accumulative, it's systematic. It is based on coping mechanisms and instinct, but also a certain amount of degradation and perversion that occurs within the self and is usually secured through egotistical and philosophical presumptions that the individual adopts, and confirmation bias that allows them to maintain a certain worldview and experience and set of experiences and beliefs that only allow them to conclude similar notions. So, to a certain extent, I believe that it is biblical to always expect, even in Christians, a certain amount of confirmation bias and a certain amount of inability to be teachable or to change. And that you should never expect to fully get somebody to see eye to eye with you or even to fellowship with God in the same way that you fellowship with Him. What is more important is having a set of shared values and shared systems and habits by which you can form a way of validating and reaching out to Christ at the same time with each other. This is why church exists. This is why the religion exists. Not to make it easier for you to get to heaven because you went to the pastor and smacked him on the booty and he smacked you in the back of your booty. No. The whole purpose of church was that you had a place where you assimilated your private worship with the community and found a sense of shared worship which you all contribute to out of the wealth of your own private worship. If you're not privately worshiping, you're not providing anything to the majority when you go to the well. Rather than taking water from the well, you should be bringing just as much water as you wish to take from the well. But that's not saying that you're always going to be able to, because you're a Christian and thus you are challenged with different parts and aspects of the walk that is different from other Christians. So some Christians need water to be brought to them, so they go to the well, but they don't draw from it. They don't have the willpower, the means, or the tools. Other Christians go to the well and they bring water and dump it in there, or they just hand it to the other Christians next to them, which honestly is the real fruit of church life. That's why small groups are so important. And if you are unsaved, weary of going to church, small groups are the way to go. They are a way of introducing yourself to the environment and a need to fellowship with God with others. If you can't get it right with a small group, then I would say that forcing yourself into a church is asking for yourself to get indoctrinated and to hurt yourself in the end. Because you will not go into it with an earnest heart for God and to get closer to Him by knowing His people. You have to go and know God for who He is, not for what you want Him to be. I want God to be the hero of this world. I want Him to save us all from ourselves, but I can't force Him to be something He is not. I want Him to be everything, and He is. But He is not everything that this world wants Him to be. He won't give the world what this world wants it to have. The world doesn't even want what God has already given it. And so I don't want my religion to be defined based off of what I feel has to be agreed upon. I want my religion defined based off of what I know I'm willing to live and die for in Christ. What I'm willing to personally bring up to him and say, I'm willing to own up to my actions on this. And so I personally believe that a certain aspect of addiction comes from the denial of that realization. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with the realizations. I do not want to figure this out. I do not want to readdress this situation. I do not want to spend the time to fix this environment. I do not want to be the reclaimer that these situations and my experiences in life had led me to basically have to redeem. I have to go back to Egypt to free my people, even if my people are just my thoughts, my hopes, and my dreams and my memories. They're just as real. They're just as real. They can define you and even take control of you. Your memories are alive. They are you. Your experiences, your expectations, your beliefs, they are you. And they matter. And that's why we use addictions to hide from it. I was just listening to something today, like some medical show, and they're talking about how it's so annoying their job and stuff because somebody got to do a surgery that they all want to do, and they're like, oh, I can just go self-medicate. Self-medicate. What do we use medication for in this COVID age? We use medication to deal with illness. We use medication to deal with symptoms of pain. We use medication for relief. So, self-medicated means that you are self-inoculating. You are seeking a vaccination for the aches, the woes, the pains, and the habits that are afflicting you with an uncomfortable or inability to thrive in the environment as it is. So thus you change the environment by adopting worldviews or beliefs that allow you to alter the environment and your sense of self within it, or you adapt habits that allow you to process and cope with the effects of this society acting upon you. The addiction is the cover-up for the pain of death of the self and the pain of failure for the self to be able to live and eat, sleep, and breathe spiritually in an environment. And where that stagnation occurs, then comes death. And I would say that it's a death that precedes the first death, because the first death can arise from this death. This is where suicide comes from. This is where, deaths through reckless behavior comes from. So the idea being that I never even logged in. So the idea is that, addiction can't be removed from our population. There's no pill to remove addiction. There's no vaccination to remove addiction from us. The only way to do that would be to physically control who and what you are. And that is why the aspects of the rituals that are a byproduct of religious belief or practices work on changing fundamentally who you are by either force or coercion and or comparison and contrasting the effects of these things. So again, we have this idea that, society wants to define us and even wants to define how we escape from it. So it's not enough for society to rob us and to murder us and to enslave us spiritually, emotionally, mentally, culturally to their will. But even more important to it is to get total domination and submission over the individual soul, essence, their blood. They want to control your blood. And isn't it not noticeable that how they control the blood? Isn't it not noticeable that one of the aspects by which they control the blood can be through technology, through nanomachines, through, the introduction of certain types of chemicals into the body? You have influences like vaccinations, which specifically change your genetic composition and its arrangement. You have things like breeding programs. You have hormone control. You have immunity blockers. You have all kinds of things that can affect how your blood interacts with itself. And the Lord used to say in the Bible that spilt blood was spilt spirit, basically. And technically, semen is also spilt blood, which we'll get into that when we start talking about the confession portions of things. But yeah, semen technically has a corresponding relationship with blood, and how your blood affects your semen is corresponded. It's correlation is causation in that sense. So how your blood is, how healthy you are in your blood, and how your immunity is working, and its response will affect your sperm count, your fertility, your ability for your sperm to adapt to the environment of the female that you're having sexual relations with, the ability for them to even be able to penetrate the egg without having genetic deformities. All of that stuff's determined by your blood type, buddy. How you treat your internal self and organs and processing abilities. So if you drink, you're messing up your kidneys and your liver, which means that you can't process your blood and filter it out properly, which means you are technically, through the sin of alcoholism, reducing the viability of your children. You are spending a generational sin, even without the metaphysical qualities of it. So metaphysical sin has both a physical, or I mean, not metaphysical sin. Generational sin has a metaphysical and physical property to it. Sin, in and of itself, either has, or also has a metaphysical and a physical property to it, but oftentimes it is one or the other, rather than a full-on systematized, like, overwhelming of the individual's processes, which occurs from birth with generational sin. Generational sin makes personal sin worse, but generational sin is nature. What about the nurture? It's not about how nature affects you, it's about how nurture affects you, and that's where societal sin comes into play. Societal sin comes into play in that when society sins, it's even worse than generational sin, because generational sin affects independent lines insofar as they make covenants upon themselves and agreements within themselves. These agreements are honored or broken as these people basically are spiritually allowed to keep them. But societal corruption, that ripples down to both it creates mass generational sin for one. It creates a wealth of interpersonal sin. It also creates private sin, and that's the truly dangerous stuff. See, intergenerational curses are bad. Intergenerational sins are the worst, and that's where you start getting into the perversions of incest. You get into the perversions of abortion. You get into the stuff where the things that you do now literally affect what could have happened for the next 40 years of society's development. You killing that one child means God can't use that child in every single person. Because how many people have you met in your life? Can you count? How many people have you interacted with in your life is still probably too high for you to count. If even one child meets 1,000 people with any form of regularity and they were able to bring goodness, benefit, and positivity into your life, does that mean that they basically have deserved to live? You know, how little influence do you have to have in people's lives to basically deserve to die is the question at that point. So even if you can get to the point where, yeah, in case of rape or a medical necessity, abortion's okay to be accepted, at least I believe it could be forgiven under certain occasions. Again, there are so many fine-tuned aspects of it that you can't just look at it with one worldview. You have to have a rounded out, godly perspective of the whole situation, which is systematized. You got to go from one process of reflection and conclusion, then the next process of conclusion in thinking, and then go to the next. You have to constantly work through these processes as a Christian in order to figure out yourself. That's hard. More importantly, it creates stress, creates anxiety, creates a sense of internal doubt and conflict. In fact, there's a YouTuber named Mike Norton. Maybe if I remember, I'll link the video to this or another video, or I'll do a response to that video. But he does a really great introduction. In fact, if you type in Mike Norton indoctrination, I guarantee you'll probably find it. But it's a good video of him talking about how he broke free of the process of his own ritualistic indoctrination into society. His liberalistic indoctrination, which I personally could really attest and validate that that is what I had to go through. I was extremely liberal. I was a socialist, and I really, really wanted Marxism to be right. I wanted it more than anything else in the world. And the idea that we could form communistic societies, commune like societies, where people love each other, band together, that's exactly the tribalistic environment that I would imagine in the Bible. And so, even before I was fully a Christian, there was this utopian notion of a perfect society that I strove so hard for. I spent years in high school just obsessing over it in the same way I obsess over these things. And that I would spend years just poring over the data, poring over the research, really questioning, like, could we start this revolution? And this is back in 2012. I was thinking about the revolution. Let's go do the Bernie Sanders stuff in 2012, 2014. This was where I was at and why I became a conservative. Because during those years, when I really, really wanted somebody to do a revolution, I really did the figures and I realized we could not. We are not responsible. We are not educated enough. We are not insulated and connected enough. We are not the kind of society that could survive a revolution much in the way that the Civil War was basically able to bring at least both of the nations together, even though they were fighting each other, at least within their land. They had certain aspects of their society which was holding together. I honestly think that our society is more like the South because of liberalism than it would have been had we stayed a conservative society. I actually think that conservatism was actually bringing us to a more positive, accepting, and assimilative cultural norm than what we have now. And liberalism has created a sense of resentment, anger, frustration, and self-exaltation that I honestly loathe now. I don't see the utopia coming from the left anymore. I don't even see the right coming up with the utopia, but I was bred to not expect the right to do anything positive in my life or for anybody else. I was literally raised my entire life to expect that conservatives were evil, selfish, cruel, vindictive, judgy individuals who will never do anything to help uplift somebody who is lower than them or who they felt deserved the conditions that they are suffering from. And you want to know who put that in me? It was the left. I was addicted to the victimized culture, and to a certain extent I still get defined by it at times. Partially because it is real. Again, the people who believe in social construction create social constructions by which they want to change society by. Almost as if they need you to believe in social constructionism so that you distrust the things that you just naturally were raised to accept as being the American way, so that you then redefine what the American way is to create a new social construction that benefits only those people who now want power over you. Oh wait, that's exactly it, and they admit to it, and they openly admit to it, and that's literally what everybody accepts and wants. So again, the fact that you all are going to be enslaved, the fact that you all want this, that's a choice you all have to make. Again, it's a byproduct of comfort over the hard process of going through the actualization process of society. So going back to the idea of religion and addiction and confessions and stuff like that, the addiction is what we rely upon so that we do not have to give. Not really what I'm trying to get across by that. What I'm really trying to get across is idea that you let go to let live. I cannot grow a seed if I hold on to the seed in my hand and think that by holding it underwater for literally months that I'll grow a plant. I might. It might grow into my hand. I might end up with a really messed up and rotten hand from having to sit in water for months on end. Or I might just kill the seed because I didn't let go of it so it can do its own thing. I'm keeping this constant pressure on it. And even if the pressure's light, even if I'm just barely holding it, just barely, there's so much force required just to hold this against gravity that even though it seems like I'm using the least amount of effort, try holding this up for 3 hours. You will be the most miserable person in the world. It was something they used to do in the military. My dad used to do it all the time when he was serving. I only had to do it a few times. It is the most miserable experience to have to hold something extremely small for hours. Even if it's just 30 minutes, it is unbearable to just hold something like this with your weak fingers and just have it while you're trying to hold it up. You feel so dumb, but you realize how much it takes just to hold something off the ground. That is our society. That is your life. That is our lives. And we don't value that because it causes pain to realize this, to realize that we do, in a way, deserve the suffering that we incur because of our own missteps and our own unwillingness to see the signs of things come before us. Yes, you can't see everything, and there are extremes and random chances that happen. There are miracles and misfortunes in this world. Consequences of having free will, perhaps. Consequences of living in a godly world gone astray, perhaps. But more importantly, I think that deep down, we would not be ourselves without these incidences to destabilize us and to challenge us. We would be robots. We would be just like everybody else. We define ourselves based off of our struggles and that which we suffered so much that I don't see how humanity or even society could exist without some level of suffering, some level of self-hatred, some level of self-doubt, some level of self-sabotage. We're literally a society and a race and a species designed to be redeemed and saved by something, either ourselves or something above us. And so then you get into the question, if you believe in God, then addiction, I believe, is a little bit different than if you don't. Because I think there's a certain amount of submission that has to be accepted, and also there's a certain amount of rebellion that comes into play depending on which side you're on. Now, for the Christian, I don't think that addiction comes out of the rebelliousness of the Christian. There are moments of the rebellion, but that comes with the loss of faith that is challenged through this ritualistic sin. You are constantly giving sacrifice to Baal, then you are going to have conflicts with your original fidelity to Christ. So thus you have this internal inconsistency as you're being unfaithful to God by sacrificing to these foreign gods and these idols that honestly can't really get you anything out of it. And so the addiction is hurtful. It's a parasite on you in that case. There's not a benefit to a porn addiction as a Christian. Not when you have a wife, not when you have kids, not when you even have a good Christian career or a church environment. That stuff, no, doesn't help you. It's not good to be a drunkard in those environments, and that's why those things destroy your walk when you are trying to be in the temple. But the conflict is that the other side is also very apparent, the rebelliousness of it. And I think that that comes into play as when these things hit you so much, when you continue to fall into the private, the personal, and societal sin, and you're hit with a generational curse on top of that, whoo-wee. Yeah, it's going to be so much stuff that you're dealing with that you're going to start losing faith, you're going to start losing hope in God, and more importantly, you're going to start wanting to find evidence of something that helps you escape the pain of wanting to believe. And I think the first step to addiction is the spiritual relief that we seek. So we're either seeking spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical relief. And oftentimes all four, which is when really I think you're lost. I think the state of being lost is when all four of those needs are so famished in you, you are unwilling to even turn to the things of God. You're looking at God like he's a salad, and you got like a 5-course steak with fries and a nice shake on the side, and you're like, that ain't even a Caesar salad. That doesn't go with this meal. Like, that's how people who are completely given over to sin and unrepentance and being unsaved, that's what it's like. All four of those systems have just completely dominated and submissive underneath the perception of their current subjective views and confirmation bias. Now, that creates in them the rebellious spirit, and rebellion is the next best thing to witchcraft. It is witchcraft. To be a witch is to rebel, and I think that there's a key to that, because again, the idea of magic is a false thing. If magic in and of itself just existed and was sinful, then it wouldn't be real. biblically speaking, it would be a divination of the man, a false god that is created and has no power. But if magic does have power, if some people are actually possessed by spirits that allow them to do magic, then that means that there is an aspect to our universe that is metaphysically able to be tapped to create matter and influences in this world. Alchemy, science, both the same thing. Same thing as magic too. It's just a level of how much proficiency and how much you want to root in ancient traditions and which ancient traditions. Again, majority of our medical sciences are based on Latin and Greek. So it's just ancient people speak that makes them sound so sophisticated and smart, added to just observations of patterns and systems that they can control and recreate on their own. Huh, sounds a lot like a seer or an alchemist. Almost as if they came from the same root during the Renaissance. Who would have thought that maybe the Enlightenment would have been created by people who were seeking to create matter out of gold? Out of lead. And reconstitute existing matter into new forms of matter. Whoa, wait, what? Almost as if science literally is alchemy. Oh! Almost as if most of our society is created by alchemy. That's the existence that you start living in when you start actually really trying to break free from everything. You start realizing just how everything just spins into itself in an Uzumaki cycle. Ugh. It's disgusting and it's annoying and it makes you feel trapped in a hell. Like, I honestly think that Dante's Inferno got it wrong. I think that there are many different layers to hell, but they all circle back into the same ground floor plan. So the addiction, the struggle in addiction, I believe, is constituted from that disharmony and that pain that exists within you as you lose connection with your original state and your original path and your original sense of self. That's not to say that because you're homosexual or you became a drug addict or something like that, you're ungodly and God has lost the image of God in you and you'll never be able to be the Christian that you were supposed to be. That's not the point. God can redeem everything. He can restore everything. Like Lazarus was brought back from the dead after being dead for 3 days, so too we can be redeemed and brought back to our original state of perfection in Christ. But what is that original state of perfection? Is it the you when you were knitted together in the womb, before you were given the task of being embodied and being raised in this earth as a crop is grown on this earth? So are you what the planter expected the seed to be? Or are you what the fruit of that crop is? What is truly the crop? So if you're growing an apple tree, is your expectation of that big grandma apple, Granny Smith apple, trees, big, well-full, all the trees are big and wide, and the branches are thick, and the apples are big, like all that extravagancy. You have all these plans. You're gonna water that tree super well, you're gonna make sure it has all the nutrients, you're gonna make sure the roots are all distributed throughout there and interconnected with every other plant so that the roots can share nutrients and share resistances to native parasites and bacterium. Dude, the systems by which trees maintain themselves and plant life maintains itself is ridiculous. And the Bible constantly points you towards plant life and the life forms of plants and then their habits and development and the process of cultivating plants for a reason. Because if you look into the science of how plants are developed and then apply that to society and mankind and yourself, revolutionizes everything, and it's completely different. To a certain extent, I see myself more as a plant than I do as an animal at times. I actually think that that's probably I think the true rejection of evolution that Christians can do is rather than say, no, I'm not an ape, I don't care about being an ape ancestor or whatever. My whole thing about the Nephilim deals with that stuff. I'm not surprised there are other hairier creatures that mimic us and yet have nothing on top of us. Does not make me flinch in the least. Whether they came first or after, I don't care. All I know is they caused degradations within ourselves that we had to get rid of in order to become what we are. So obviously I'm not a gorilla. whether the eugenicists say I am or not. Again, Margaret Sanger and the rest of them who really like pushing this on the black community that we needed to go and kill our children, that whole push was based on the idea that we're subhuman, that as African Americans we'll never achieve the same standards and qualities that whites have, and that as a society we will make white people weaker. So we must be curtailed, and those white people who have already been infected and have already been reduced in status should be removed from society. That was a whole eugenics movement of the liberal progressives of that time. They wanted to get rid of people, depopulate people, so they can create a perfect society of laborers to push their Marxist agendas. To break free of that, reject it all. And don't just reject it all blindly. Again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer because I don't believe vaccines don't work. I know vaccines work. I had a tetanus shot for a reason. I don't want to risk going through lockjaw because I'm an ass. No. I'm not going to go through the risk of giving my kids polio because I'm an ass. There are certain things that the risk do show you that you can be willing to take it on, but you have to do so in the leading of Christ. It does me no good, and I have nothing in my spirit that tells me I need to go and get a flu shot. Why should the government and Caesar tell me I need a flu shot then? This was a conundrum I had when I was in the military. I had to get vaccinations without any say because I had already given my consent as a tool of the U.S. government and as a weapon of the U.S. government to be primed, conditioned, and cleaned and set up in such a way so that I would be fully efficient to the utilization of warfare or resource distribution for warfare for the purposes of this United States government. That idea meant that I did not have autonomy over my own integrity. My own genetic, biological integrity was compromised by the allegiance I made to the United States government. And I personally made that choice out of a faithfulness that my public service and that my patriotism to my nation was part of my right and part of my duty as an American citizen to fully achieve the title of a Native American. And I know people find that to be, oh, you shouldn't use that term, it's culturally insensitive. That's stupid as hell. One, I have Native American back down in my roots, whether you want to get into the mixed roots or not. I don't care. I have Cherokee and Arapaho in my blood, so you guys can go suck dick. Beyond that, I am a Native American. I don't get to leave this nation. If this nation falls, I don't get to flee to Canada or Mexico. Even if I wanted to, I know I don't share the ideology and the mentality and the beliefs and the culture of those regions, so why would I go there and expect to continue to be who I am? So if I go into Mexico expecting to be an American, expecting to establish Texas in the middle of Jalisco, Mexico, then I'm a fool, and I'm an asshole, and more importantly, I'm an invader. So when it comes down to it, I am a Native American. I have no choice. More than most people. Like, my whole family's back east. California's it for me. My parents went to California. Unless I want to pack up everything I know and love, everything I've ever learned, everything that I love and have accepted about my world around me, unless I'm willing to give up all of that, pack it up, and move down south or back east, I am a Californian and have nothing else to my identity in terms of where my locality is. I have nothing else. There is no global citizenry. There is no national identity at that point. In terms of family and self, like, again, when people ask, where do you come from? What do I say? Back east? Because that's where my family's at? So thus my identity should be tied up in my family back east? I could do that, and to a certain extent it is. But the reality of it is that I am a Californian defined by the fact that my parents chose to join the military, chose to live out a life that allowed them, by circumstances and conditions and personal choices, to live in California, decide to settle down here in the 80s, and make this their home. And the consequences of that decision and the political actions that California made during the course of those 20 years I was developing fundamentally changed my life. California in the 90s was more conservative, and more importantly, had it remained conservative, what would our lives have been like? How would our 90s and early 2000s would have gone had California been like Texas? how the elections have gone. So, when I think about why it's important to be an American, why it's important to be an American and to relish the fact that I am a native here. I was born from this soil. I ate from the soil here. Yeah, there's a lot of foreign food we import in there, and to a certain extent, now that I'm a Christian, and I kind of see why the food we eat doesn't contribute to our soul, to a certain extent, actually, I'm kind of having a preference for locally grown food more often now, because to a certain extent, what you eat and where it comes from does affect you spiritually and biologically. There are certain nutrients and certain types of ways that life forms and organisms are created and processed and just formulated in the environment that's specific to that environment, and the native properties of that environment change. In fact, right now I'm working on my soil samples. I collect soil wherever I go, mostly for comparisons, but also largely because I really like seeing the different compositions of soil that exist depending on your context. I'm hoping I had one of my sand ones, but I guess I don't have one of my sand ones out. It's probably upstairs. Yeah, that's all water. I have soil and water samples. And technically, I don't have a microscope to show you guys the water samples, so we'll just do wet sand, dry sand. Now, technically, these sands come from two different locations. This sand coming from the desert, this sand comes from the beach. I have another sample that comes from a beach in Florida, which is completely different from this beach sand, which is completely dirty and has different mineral compositions than the beaches on Florida, which come from different substances that interact with each other and produce different reactions. So soil changes. So the soil you're planted in, as a plant that grows in the name of Christ or the world, defines how much you produce as a crop. What does this have to do with addiction? Sorry, because again, I'm you guys know how I'm prone to these long-winded things. Tirades. Um, Going back to the end and summing up really the sum of what this whole talk about addiction is are really kind of the origins of addiction. I would say that ultimately at the end of the day, addiction is perhaps the very first sin humanity has ever been conflicted with, and that it is probably the root of all sins, in the sense of all real unredemptive sin lies in addiction. Starting from in an Aristotelian fashion, how do you make a sin out of eating? Again, yeah, hell, first 10 commandments right here. Fuck, let's figure out how they were designed then. Well, it's good to eat, but you can kill yourself if you eat too much. If you eat the wrong things, you can also kill yourself. And if you eat nothing, you can kill yourself. So you have just 3 expressions right there for one thing. Does that mean eating's good or evil? We're human for a reason. For God, that question's utterly retarded. But for us, if you really thought about it, how can you really say eating's good or bad? For God, eating's good. Yeah, He created it. You have a process, you have the ability to eat. Duh, eat. So, in a pragmatic sense, which is why we default into pragmatism as if that wasn't created. Like, the fact that people don't realize that our pragmatic behavior and our ability to be pragmatic towards certain situations that otherwise would cause philosophical and psychological conflict is an aspect of us that is from God. Like, I don't understand why people don't seem to realize that the cynic in us, the smart ass in us, and the aspect that tells us to question everything doesn't come from God. You mean to tell me you don't question yourself and your own decisions? Really? Really? Like, part of God being God is that he's always been willing to put himself on the stand and testify against and for himself and let himself prove who he is by just being himself. So, I mean, I don't understand why people expect God to be something he isn't. He is not some person who just, I have to look the best, I have to look the best. If they see me act and my act isn't perfect, then they won't believe. That's utterly, like, when did we get this notion that God had an appearance in an image that was defined by us because of white Jesus imagery? I don't want to use that as an excuse. That seems like a very weak excuse for what ultimately comes down to you just having the lack of mindset to see and think outside of the box about your own God. And for those of you who don't believe in any God, fuck, alright. More power to you. Have fun with light beings and shadow beings, if that's what you see and interact with. Have fun with tree spirits and wind deities, if that's what you want. Or you can have fun disintegrating into nothingness if you really want to reach Zen. Fucking fool. I mean, again, none of those options sound beautiful to me. The only worldview I could honestly appreciate at this point in my life is atheism. Raw, 100% unadulterated, fully rooted in scientific progressivism atheism. And those people are not people I really like talking to. I can respect them. They ain't getting it. Because they're all on the other side of that fence. And trust me, I was there. Oh, I was there. Trust me. Talking to my god brother, he'll tell you all the stories of how much I used to talk about Christians being stupid, how they were ignorant, how they didn't know enough, how they were so foolish to let their church get taken over. Oh, dude, I went through the whole tirade of the agnostic, atheistic fucking pat that we all have, where we sit there and we blame all the wrongs of Christianity on fallible people. But when I really started knowing God, and as I continued to get to know him, that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that gets you slapped by angels. When you start speaking as a Christian after a certain point. That's the kind of stuff that gets angels looking at like, and he just saved you? So, I mean, every time somebody is saved, the angels rejoice. Every time somebody sins, the angels weep. It is very true. This whole not being able to go anywhere thing is odd. Because again, I'm used to being locked inside. I'm used to being socially distant from people and being socially distanced from people. But this whole artificial, socially mandated form of social distancing seems weird to me. And also, oddly enough, maybe perhaps my contrarian habit makes me almost want to go and disobey it, just by the virtue of spiritually just not agreeing with what we're doing right now. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel moral, it doesn't feel just that for us to be doing this because of this virus. I don't like how we're reacting to this virus. I do believe quarantine is right. I do believe we need to be protective. I do believe we need to be doing research to help cure this thing because I believe this was biologically designed. I believe man created this disease. I believe that men released this disease. And I believe that men need to figure out how to put the cap back on their own damn mess before it kills us all. But that's a whole side thing. And again, this is why I'm an anti-vaxxer. It's not that I don't believe in vaccinations, it's that instead, I actually want to steer the conversation away from, let's just vaccinate ourselves willy-nilly at the whim of the federal government, and instead go into the, we know the federal government's been creating organisms to kill people. We need constant transparency on every single biological organism you people tamper with, design, create, or influence, or even just look at. Handle that, then I'll let you inject me whatever the hell you want. But until you can tell me what you're putting into me and every single aspect about it and show me how to create it on my own for when you get destroyed and don't have the resources, the time, the manpower, or the willingness to do so to help me and my children when we're forced to live in the woods, then you don't get to tell me I'm a harm to society because I don't want to jump on your bandwagon train to get injected with the next big thing. Because you all have never proven yourselves reliable. What? Oh, am I going to go off the last 10 years of government history? The last 20 years of government history? You guys really want to go back to the 80s? You guys really want to go back to the 70s and what you guys were doing? You guys really want to go back to the 60s, the 50s, the eugenics movement? I mean, again, keep going back. Has the government ever proven to be responsible for the biological and social integrity of the individual? I'll let that one sit in there for a moment. I'd say every bit of my resentment towards society is oriented towards those very, very painful feelings I have. Because, like I said, I joined the military willingly. Yeah, it didn't end well. Yeah, it was horrible, and I went through a lot of mental hell towards the end of it. But they were some of the best years of my life. And they were some of the most freest years of my life. I felt more alive, more human, more like real in those years. And it wasn't just because of the fluffing of being part of a system where they managed you and itemized you, but because honestly, that exists when I came back and when I left. I tried to escape society because I wanted to honestly not be here. I don't like living here. I don't like living on Earth. I don't like this. Hell, first suicidal impulse I had when I was 13. It is not weird for me to have suicidal ideation. I've had it my whole life. I've only recently over the years have started seeking it because they've gotten worse. And certain experiences have happened that triggered me to have to deal with these things, both because of the grief and the self-shame that I would feel towards my own feelings of death and my own feelings of my own demise. That was something the enemy was using to weaken me and to keep me in a lot of my addictive hold on me, was through my fear of death and my fear of my inability to prevent my death. And thus, I tried to inoculate from my constant pain of knowing I'm going to die and that I'll never have control of that. In fact, for me, it's not even so much that I don't have control over my death, it's that I almost expect to die the minute I do something right. In fact, I almost expect that the only reason why I'm still alive is because I keep fucking up, and the minute I do something right, somebody's gonna kill me. I'm gonna die in some fucked up accident or some stupid ass shit. That's been what I expect in my life. Every damn day. And until that, I expect to suffer the loss of my family, my friends, and everything I love. That's what I've lived with my whole damn life. That's why I run away into drugs. That's why I ran away into drinking so damn hard. Why I ran away into porn addiction. Why I ran away into so many things. Why I still run. That is a horrible thing to have wavered on you. And everybody has their own thing. Chip on all of our shoulders. We're all damaged, wounded, and stuff. That's why you have to be taken, stuck into the fire and heated. Then they remove the sword or the piece of metal. They put it on the in between another piece of metal, and they grab the hammer and they pound, 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 pound it down. And you see the sparks fly. You see as bits of metallic matter and really soul and energy and essence and identity is ripped from that object and splattered across everything, including the forger himself, who's burning himself and dealing with all the heat of having to forge all this stuff. And that's what God's doing. He's pounding away. But Satan himself, he likes to take you out right when God thinks he's done. This has been tempered perfectly. Got the light shine, right sharpness. Could literally cut a feather on this. You're perfect. You're gonna walk your walk perfect. You've been saved. You got the blood of Christ covering you. Got the Holy Spirit indwelling you. You were good. You're a well clean, lubricated, freaking armor wearing machine, Christianizing the world, right? And the second he turns around, goes out of the room, Satan rolls in here. Ooh, that's a really nice sword. Pulls the sword out, looks at you, admires your temper, admires the shine, the luster, the reflectiveness of the sword. And he goes, "Will you let me use you?" Oftentimes, We do. We let him use our spirit as it wishes. Oh, this person cut me off. Fuck them. Oh, this person denied me something. You're evil. I'm sorry. I really enjoy the Kermit. I feel like the Kermit is a great expression of exaggerated frustration. Ah! Oh, I feel bad for Jordan Peterson. The fact that you've been compared so much to a Muppet that now people imagine you as the Muppet voice because you sound like the Muppet, but people can watch the Muppet act and then sit there and like overlay it with your speeches and then just have as the reaction piece. It's like this man has become a meme and it's hilarious. I hope Jordan Peterson's doing better. He goes through depression. This guy's been practicing for 20 years. Case in point. Now, he's not a Christian, so maybe that's a safe for how that works out, but I don't think so. There's plenty of Christians in therapy who are pastors. Jordan Peterson has been helping people in psychology for decades. And yet he literally relapsed and had to go to therapy because he could not handle the stress upon his life, trying to do what he felt was the right thing to do. You try to do the right thing, the real right thing, the thing that society literally is trying to hide from you. What else are you going to get with resistance? What else are you going to get but the hatred of everyone around you? What else are you going to get other than being told that you're wrong, you're shameful, you're a monster, you're everything that society needs to reject and hate? You should be glad. You should be happy. If anything, you people really should see Trump's behavior as a good example for how you just need to not give a damn about the world if you really believe in what you believe in the Bible. If you truly believe the Bible says what it does, you should have a Trumpian attitude towards a lot of things. Not to be prideful about it, not to be egotistical about it. Again, Trump is not Christ. Trump isn't even David. Hell, Trump is barely Solomon. Hell, Trump, if anything, is probably King Cyrus, which again, wasn't a believer of God. He was just somebody who went, these people are pretty cool. They don't seem to want to screw me over, and honestly, every time I help them, they seem to help me back. I guess I'm just going to keep helping them and let them go ahead and have whatever territory they want. What is it going to do to me? I own the whole world. That seems more so akin to what I kind of see in Trump. I'm not saying that he's going to redefine Christianity and save us from the onslaught of communism. If it came down to one man saving us from the crap that's going to destroy the world and our humanity, it's not going to be Trump. It's going to be us. Don't you guys see that? Don't you guys see that our leaders mean nothing? Our leaders give a guiding post, a rallying flag, a banner for the kind of attitudes that we want to adopt on the situations that we are facing and how we want to interact with them. Is that to say that Trump is the best example of how to interact in every situation? No. But I don't think the Democrats have done any better. And I lived under them for 12 years. Trump was a welcomed change from that. And more importantly, he came at a time where I was like, after 8 years of us complaining about how Obama was treated and then realizing he wasn't actually being treated bad at all that entire time, yeah, I kind of want the Democrats to kind of get crapped on a little bit. I kind of want them to become hypocrites. I kind of want them to expose just how much like the right that they really are. Because they've preached all this game about how we're anti-corruption, we're anti-manipulation. We don't coerce people. We don't use money to influence politics. Literally, the unions are politically and financial freaking mobsters. That's all they are. The DNC is just a freaking mob. You guys see how they treated Sanders. You guys see how they treat anybody. We live in a world of false assumptions and false conclusions. People think that just because I'm a conservative and just because I'm a Christian and just because I voted for Trump, I even want to vote for him next election. Give me a more Christian president than Trump. Maybe I'd vote for him. But to be honest, I might not actually trust him right now. I think a Christian politician coming in right after Trump would be exactly what the enemy wants. Because that Christian likely would be like most of the Christians of this world. Oh, Let's just focus on love. Let's just accept this. Let's continue to let our children get killed in absurd levels of abortion. Let's continue to let our children grow up to be adults who murder themselves to cocaine addictions and all kinds of fucked up shit. Yes, alcohol and car accidents and rape and marital abuse and divorce. Yeah, let's just. I don't want to be mean. Don't want to judge. Yeah, I ain't voting for that. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm not going to let this nation go down like Israel. I studied the history of Israel extensively, both this current one and every iteration of it since it ever walked into that peninsula. I am not repeating that for us. If I have any say in what I can contribute, that's all I can do for you guys, is try to not be somebody who contributes to that as a minority. Even if that means I have to be rejected by my entire people, race, and family. That matters more that this nation is steered on the right path with every independent, individualistic choice. Doesn't mean I'm going to raise my kids in a cult. That's the last thing I freaking want. In fact, it's everything I'm going to raise them to fight against. But it does mean that they're going to have something to define themselves by and live for. I'm not robbing them of religion. I was robbed of religious views. Like, yeah, I went to Catholic school for like a year or two as a kid. Like, it wasn't that much of an influence for me. But ultimately, what I really want is I just want a people that I can look at and see Christ in. I see that to a certain extent with the church right now, but with the denominations as they are, you really think that we're a people of God? We're 7 different tribes fighting against each other. There is no symmetry in the house of Israel right now. The Messianics, I think, have it closer. The Seventh-day Adventists, I think, have it better in certain aspects. Heck, even the Catholics seem to be waking up, which is... You were good, y'all. You were good. And it's almost terrifying what you do. Because again, the Antichrist is going to be exposed very soon, people. He's already been exposed, but the world will finally admit to it. And again, I remember a part of the Bible that used to say that when we are finally shown he who is confounded and reduced us to this oppression, this state of death and decay and sin in the world, we're going to go, this is the one who deceived our nations, who led kings to their own slaughter, who sabotaged our entire species from the dawn of time. This deity, Satan? Which is interesting, considering that Satan's supposed to be one of the highest cherubs. So the highest creation, one of the most splendid, most beautiful things that God has created in heaven, holds nothing at all to a human being who is a sinner and yet has been reclaimed by God. That's the most ridiculous thing about the Bible, is that all of the gods and goddesses, all of their power, all of these influence, all of the religions can't hold a torch to somebody who has made a mistake and has been redeemed, so that they can live and make new choices, so that they don't longer have to live the life they used to live. And again, I talked a lot about, addiction, the idea, the habits around it and stuff like that, but But I think what I'm going to go into now is focusing less on addiction and what it is and kind of the influences on society that is caused by it. Instead, end this hopefully within the next 20 minutes. Honestly, I was waiting for a phone call this whole entire time, so praise the Lord it didn't show up, because I'm hoping that this is actually informative and helping people. But going to addictions and my personal addictions, I tell you guys, I try to be honest about a lot of the things I'm struggling with on here. I probably shouldn't be. If I was being reasonable, I probably really wouldn't be. But, and I'd like for this to be a small but I don't think we're looking at it being that way. But I think that, actually, let me rephrase this all from the start. It is not my desire nor does it benefit me at all as a leader, a shepherd, or even as a servant of God, or as a human being in general, or just a rational human being, to force upon you all to believe in Christ, to force you all to become Christians under false pretenses or under a false assumption of the Christian walk. I cannot be mad at the Christians who have led me on the path that I'm on because their path was different. I have a friend named Justin who, honestly, had he not maintained his standards and his refusal to really cross over fully into sin, like, yeah, he drank occasionally, never was a drunkard. Yeah, he hung around people who smoked, never really smoked weed like us. In fact, he never touched the stuff. Didn't get into half the things he was, but he rolled with us pretty hardcore because we were his boys and he loved us and he was praying for us the entire time. This man, honestly, when I first met him, I thought he hated my guts because he was my boss. And then I met him, ironically enough, I didn't know that he did theater. I ended up doing, I was still doing theater at that time. And so we ended up doing a play together and I was like, oh crap, I'm working with my boss who hates me. And ironically enough, I now have to work under him in the play too. Weird as heck. But again, it was how we became really good friends. And without his example in my life, even as a Catholic, and again, I have my conflicts with the Catholic religion on the scale of their leadership and on the scale of their catechism. But when it comes to the people like Justin, Josh, a lot of the Catholics that I've met, I love them. And they are my brothers. Like, more than I could say a lot of the other Christians who have baked for me, those men have really gone out of their way to help me in the different times. I'd say Justin especially because for him, he came into the darkness. And had he not done that, that was a prefiguring for what my heart wanted this whole time. And he's the one who I honestly want to get to the point to be like. Even though he's Catholic, that means nothing to me because content of his Christian walk and the faith and the level of discipline he puts into trying to seek his faith out and validate it through a fellowship of Christ and a fellowship of other people, Christian and non-Christian, it made me realize that this was real. Not just real in a it's real to me sense, but it was real in a sense of this has a value that causes people to put themselves in the situations that they would never rationally want to be in or even surround themselves with. Around people who they should hate and be disgusted by and who honestly don't respect them. And trust me, we did not respect Justin as much as he deserved to be respected. I had to learn to respect him more as the years came on, but trust me, had I been able to respect him when I first met him, it would have been completely different for me probably as a Christian, and it would have redefined my life. Because I wasn't even in a relationship with Katie at the time. So this is like 6 years, like what? We broke up in 2018, we dated for 4 years. This was like 6 years before 2018, 2012 when I met Justin. I started dating Katie in 2014. That's 2 years of development where I probably could have been way further along my Christian path on this current path. Not the path of, I just want to have a Christian life and a Christian family and figure out Christian things. That's all I figured out in those 4 years with Katie and figured out all that crap. These last 3 to 4 years on my own, figuring out crap on my own, from 2018 to 2020, has all been about getting to the point that I should have been before I ever even met Katie or figured out all that stuff. Because had I followed the example of people like Justin, people like my old friend Josh, I would have been able to actually break free of it. Hell, Josh and Joe were my best friends throughout most of my high school years and college years. And honestly, I felt shame when I learned just how different we were. Because I had more sex than them. I did more bad shit than them in general. But to me, I looked at them as if they were, the movers and shakers. I saw them as the popular kids, the people who were always doing something, always had people around them, always living life. And yet, they were looking at me like, what? You got to do that? That's kind of intense. Whoa, dude, you're having a crazy life. And I'm sitting here going, no, I'm just trying to be normal because I think that you guys are normal. It's the weirdest experience. And because of this instability, this anxiety that I've always had in my life about never feeling normal, always feeling weird, which came from a time where through much of my childhood, I was told I was stupid, I was told I was ignorant, I was told to shut up, I was told to sit in the corner and to let other people speak for me. I was told in general to not be seen and noticed unless I had something that was so overwhelmingly important to say that it meant that I was allowed to look like a fool. Because I was so weird as a kid and awkward that I was just generally dismissed because I wouldn't be able to form conversations properly. I had to go to developmental classes during elementary school to help me learn how to speak, and I've always had a conflict with speaking. Part of the reason why I'm so verbose and why I focus on using a lot of words, it's actually more of a defense mechanism. It's less about pride and it's more about the fact that I don't want to speak unless I feel like I can exactly say what it is I want to say. Otherwise, I won't say crap. I don't want to say anything unless it's exactly how I feel it should be said. And that cripples me even when it comes to typing things, because I have such an expectation that people have an expectation for how I'm supposed to act and be and define myself and put my stuff out there that I get crippled by it. So the drugs, the addictions, these were the things that relieved the tension of it and made me just be like, well, this is the day-to-day thing. I could do this. But I could not. I couldn't. That's why I wanted to die for so damn long. I mean, crap. The fact that it took me last year, almost dying, cleaving through a damn telephone, literally hit a mud patch, went through a tree, half of my car was just instantaneously in. Like, literally, the passenger side was gone. If somebody was in my passenger seat, they would have been dead. I flipped, cleaved through a telephone pole, landed on the ground with nothing but smoke surrounding me and a bit of shards in the glass in my mouth. It was ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. I was pissed. I was so damn mad. I was so unbearably pissed for those first few minutes that I just sat there until somebody arrived. Just angry at God. Because I was like, you had your chance. What the fuck, man? Take me out. Get rid of this. I don't want to keep smoking weed. I don't want to keep doing drugs. I don't want to be tempted to do worse. I don't want to be tempted by porn. I don't want to be tempted by having a relationship. I don't want to live anymore constantly wanting to work harder because I want to make more money, even though every time I do so, I feel like I get into worse situations and commitments and I can't get out of them. Oh my God, my life was such a fucking mess at that time and still is. Oh, and you think how easy it could be just to quickly take that cement block before I think about it, just quickly just beeline off that bridge. Whoo! You people don't understand how much I think about that. Like, you guys don't understand how much that consumed me. The idea of, if I just wasn't so much of a bitch, I could just quickly end this. And that's why, for me, I take suicide so seriously, and I take a lot of this stuff so seriously, because I've watched people, literally, is both because of my cowardice, but also the fact that I overanalyze everything that saved my life. The fact that I am neurotic, by coincidence, actually is the only reason why I'm still here. Because if I was just a little bit more mentally put together and didn't have the mental illness that I'm suffering through, I would have committed to that. And I probably wouldn't be here talking to you people. That's ridiculous to me, that it's by the circumstances of having borderline personality disorder and the ADHD and the other crap that I'm going through. All that stuff that honestly I didn't even know I had for most of my life until I finally got help. It's literally the only reason why I'm still alive. That's ridiculous to me that by circumstances I got to figure it out. Every year before that, I used something else to cope. I had an addictive personality, and to a certain extent, I had a rebellious personality. I was lucky. Because of the condition of my family being rather isolated from the rest of the family, I only had my parents and my immediate brothers. Family thus was extended to my peers and the people who finally would accept me, and that was a very small number. So even though my family was troubled, even though we had conflicts and we were constantly bickering and people were in and out of the house and people sometimes didn't come back, and a lot of my youth was spent alone. I would say that most of it was. Unbearably alone. I started drinking when I was 14 for a reason. There's the little Rasputin image. It's my favorite thing. Honestly, had it not broken, I would honestly have wanted that mirror as an heirloom, even though it creeped me the hell out that we had it for so many years. My dad got this mini bar that he set up. I don't know if he had it before the divorce, but definitely after divorce, he had the mini bar. It had vodka, Patron, a lot of different little knickknacks, and very nice tasting hard liquor in it. Woo! um, I was not a beer drinker until I turned 18. So the first 4 years of my drinking was straight hard liquor. Like every day, I had a thing of fruit juice in a can that was in the freezer. I would rip that off, take the little freaking blender, pop that thing on there, dunk like two of these things in there, pour a bunch of alcohol in it, maybe get a little bit of soda, maybe a little bit of juice, just kind of break it down so the icy thing will mix into it. Then I had this nice potent mixture. I just pour that in a pitcher, get some more. Oh shit, might have drank too much. When's Pops gonna be home? 2 days from now? 3 days from now? He's not gonna notice if I put a little bit of water in there. The line deception began really early once I started drinking. Like, oof. And I mean, shoot, drinking came after I started watching porn. I started porn, I think, when I was like 11 or 10. Really young. And it was like, honestly, I wasn't like into crazy porn. Most of it was actually rather demure. Now that I think about it, it was mostly focused on more of continuation of my artistic desires. Because as a kid, I really liked artwork, and when I'd study sculptures, I was very attracted to the human figure, both male and female. I just think the way that we're designed as creatures is just so interesting, and our composition is it's beautiful and really weird. It's gross in a certain aspect too, because really, when you get down to it, we're just meat bags full of liquids and biologically hazardous materials that just each other repeatedly, and it's like, but for some reason, it's also amazing because out of that, you produce new creatures and things like that. I mean, I don't understand it. How we are just okay with these processes by which we contribute to, but they're phenomenally remarkable if you really think about them and how much energy, effort, and resources need to be put into doing it. So when I started watching porn and stuff like that, it was a carryover of the Venus statue. Like, those are the first things I was really attracted to, like the statue of Venus, the statue of Athena. Actually, the figure of Athena I was very attracted to, because both the idea of wisdom being beautiful and having such a lovely form. It's a very romanticized notion, and also it kind of fit the general idea of what I was personally struggling with, because I'd say I was about 6 when I first started trying to like engage with the opposite sex, I would say, because my brothers, they were like in their teens, so I was kind of leading by their example in the sense of like, oh, you like somebody, you tell them you like them, and you try to hang out with each other, and that's what you do. Never ask out girls in elementary school. Just save yourself the trouble. Just be their friends and then go on. That would be my advice to younger Colin. Just don't even waste your time. Half the time, they're not going to be the same people you meet when they're older. So that probably would have saved me a lot of trouble at that age. But I didn't listen to older Colin back then because he didn't exist. So younger Colin foolishly would be like, oh, we get along? I like talking to you. I think I like you. Did not end well. So the idea of me interacting with women at the time for that kind of idea of intimacy, I was way... I couldn't even appreciate women for being women at that point, because I went from like 6 to the age of like 11 to 12, fearful, terrified, and absolutely hateful towards women, because any interaction I had with them was usually related to bullying or manipulation, or a girl convincing me she likes me so that she can basically make me look like a fool in front of all her friends, or in front of the guy she likes. Fuck that. That's why I'm so hostile to like any other thing. Like, I don't like dating people who have other people in their life or other hang-ups. Largely because it just brings me back to that one moment as a kid where I'm sitting there before the entire class being laughed at because I gave this girl a bear and told her I liked her. Nah, nah. Oh. There's so many things that happen to us in our youth that just carry over. And you know how we deal with it? Medication. So I started on porn. 11. Busting on there in the Japanese forums. I didn't know what Kante was, so I was just like, oh, cool, weird letters. Weird letters led into me going and eventually found hentai. That was how I got started, ironically enough. And honestly, it stayed pretty innocent. I would say it was just more so a curiosity of the differences between male and female that would then be observed. But I mean, it didn't change the fact that I still stared at it for hours, wondering what the difference is, wondering what I would look like as a woman, wondering how my wife may look like. Dude, there were so many different considerations I had because I didn't understand women and I didn't understand the feminine aspects of that world. And honestly, I did not feel close to my mother, largely because as the youngest, there was always a sensitivity in my family towards babying. So even though I was babied somewhat, the babying also came with a certain amount of constant harassment and constant validation that I wasn't being babied and that I am being matured in the right way and that my mom is not stifling my ability to grow up. The type of dynamics that people have when they're fearful of different other people's behaviors and how it affects other people really can damage society and individuals within society. And so I'm very much the byproduct of the machinations of people who are terrified of what others will do to me because of who I am and what my conditions are and why I was raised. That's part of the reason why rejecting that now as an adult is a large part of healing from my childhood where I had no autonomy or agency to even speak or even tell myself who I was. I mean, again, I'm very light skinned. My father, who looks just like me, try having that walk into a school and be like, Colin, is Colin here? I brought some food for him. Wearing a cop outfit. Most people were sitting there going, why is a cop bringing you lunch? And I'm like, that's my daddy. And they're like, so how white is your mom? And I'm like, well, she's not white. She's black, like me. She looks like me. I look like my grandmother. And I look like my grandfather. How am I not black? And then they would go and look at me and go, that's not possible. If he's that dark and you're that light, you're supposed to be dark. Or better yet, you would look more black and act more black if you were really black. That's been the classic I've heard my entire life. I don't act black enough. The guy who studies the civil rights movement and literally loves Webb du Bois more than anything else on this earth, and has studied the Civil War extensively so that he could help figure out what it was supposed to mean for his people. I'm not black enough. Growing up with that, there's so many things that I was told that I just medicated away. Suppressed within, dealt it in, and covered up with criticisms and stoicism. And I didn't speak on it, and I tried my hardest to be a good person. But in silence, porn, alcohol, every damn day, all day long. The only thing that really stopped it was that I got a little sister, and so I did not want to be on that stuff or have any possibility of that contaminating her. So I went away from that stuff largely to protect my sister. But again, what did that lead me to do? My little sister's 13. I left my father's house in 2013. For 7 years, I haven't been in my little sister's life largely because even though I'm a better example than my older brothers were to me, I am so ashamed and feel like such a hypocrite for even wanting to be a better example in her life that I avoid her despite the fact that I've always wanted a little sister. And even though she's not my blood, I fucking love Charlie more than anything because she's a really good kid. And I could see it even when she was really young. Like, yeah, she's kind of a brat. She has those moments. But honestly, so was I. And I kind of like the fact that people in my family are brattish because we're only brats around people we're we care about, and we feel safe around. And I know for a fact that she wouldn't be a brat the way she is with me when we're hanging out if she was out in school, because I know her. She's like me, introverted, kind of like our father and her mother in that regard, where they're both introverted. So for me, I'm so proud of my little sister, and I love her so much, but I've missed her entire life up to this point because I'm not where I want to be, and because I didn't want to have any sign of her knowing that I drink, that I smoke, that I look at porn, that I hang out with people who do things that are not the best things to be doing. How do I deal with that pain? Because that's just one. And that's towards a sibling that I'm not even related to. My older siblings, I feel a constant sense of shame and sense of survivor guilt because they went through the worst aspects of everything in our lives, and their lives are completely destroyed. At least as far as I'm concerned, at times when I reflect, they are definitely not in a place where they're stable and safe. So to me, I feel like I shouldn't even be alive right now, and I should have been medically aborted like I was basically supposed to be. So, again, you get into this whole idea of you really want to pull back the layers. There's a lot of reasons why people are addicted to the things they are. And when you get to the people who are homeless, because I was supposed to be homeless 2 years ago and was for a temporary period, trust me, going insane is that's the relief of the poverty. The people talking to themselves when they walk around the street, that's the only thing keeping them alive. It's talking to the voices in their head. Because when you lose every aspect of society, including anything on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're gone. You're not even a person anymore. And more importantly, nobody cares about you. That's the hardest part. Civilians, I thought it was hard for me to cope with being normal and have belonging before I left for the military. And when I left for the military, I was genuinely scared that I'd be indoctrinated, programmed, become a super... Sir, yes, sir! Like, I thought that I would be a completely different person, and to a certain extent I was. I was not. The saluting, the good behavior and all that stuff, that was everything I had done up until that point in my life just to survive as a civilian. Just, for once, it actually wasn't getting me punched in the face. It wasn't getting me screwed over. It wasn't getting the people I was dating cheating on me. People seemed to actually respect the fact that I was being honorable. Huh. Crap. I kind of like that feeling. Maybe I'm going to want to pursue a life that makes me feel like I'm being honorable and honoring something higher than myself more often. I was trapped once I started doing that because up until then, all I had was my civilian life and a life that was constantly around people who felt either victimized or angry about their environments. Not actually seeking to utilize it, but generally they were always just reacting to things. For once, I was actually being proactive and dealing with things as they came. It's redefined my whole life, and then I found books like A Brief... It's actually funny. My conservative values largely came because of the works of Robert Heinlein, the guy who wrote Starship Troopers. He wrote a series of books called The Methuselah's Children. I've read a little bit of all of them. I didn't finish the first two books in the sense that, like, I sped read through them, so I'll be honest, I'm not the best. I didn't read all of them, but I definitely read the third one, which is the main book about one of the characters from the older books, who's the main character in this book as the oldest human being alive in the entire universe. And humanity's managed to solve all of our world problems. So what is the problem in the book? Well, the problem in the book is, one, Lazarus is so old, he doesn't even want to live anymore. Yeah, he could be young for as long as he wants, but that makes him miserable. In fact, they forcefully rejuvenate him from the age of, like, I think 150 to, like, 20s, and he was pissed. He was absolutely livid. He was like, how dare you take my right to die like a human being? Because literally, this fool disappeared off the face of the universe, avoids every single piece of technology that exists, and they're in space. Like, this is an entire planet built around technology. He went to the backwater of backwater planets to die in the middle of a saloon with the appearance of an old man. Like, nobody understood that this man is basically a deity. And they're just watching this old man die. And then suddenly a wave of people from like the richest colonies roll in, kidnap him, and you're like, well, I guess he fucked up. And you went on with your rest of your day, never even knowing that that person was the founder who probably is your forerunner and gave birth to you. Like, that's how important this guy was. And yet this entire story was about how do you get somebody like that to even want to contribute to society when he's seen it all, done it all, experienced it all, and has watched humanity at its best, its worst, and its mediocre, which is all this perfect utopian human galactic civilization is. Literally all they talk about, every single character, is how monotonous having everything provided for him, everything perfectly suited for him, an entire environment compartmentalized and converted for their sake, it made him miserable. It made it so that literally the claim for, because one of the people who saves Lazarus is one of his ancestors. Well, everybody's his ancestor, but one of his ancestors is the leader of an entire planet. Like, he is the god king of that planet. And he's sitting there going, I don't want this power. I don't want this influence. I don't even want to be in charge of this planet. I want to leave this planet and go as far away from human civilization as possible to start something new that's truly human. Because this isn't normal. We rejuvenate ourselves, we create our children, we modify our children, all of us are genetically modified, all of us can do whatever we want. I want something else. I need struggle. I need something real. I need the frontier in our life. And so this whole story is about finding a new frontier, even though humanity has discovered everything in the universe. And you know what? They do find a frontier, both in time and in space. The story's amazing in what it really does with the whole dynamics of the situation. But the central conflict was, how do you get a man who's seen it all, lived through it all, to live and interact with everybody around him? And that's ultimately what it was, because Lazarus wasn't having any of it with anybody. He didn't want to talk to anybody. And he was standoffish, critical, and very, in a lot of ways, just self-driven to want to die. They convinced him to live, largely because they showed him that life was worth living, that the people around him were worth living for. And ultimately, he built a whole new society, and they all go off into the stars to start something new. That's an amazing story to me, and I read that back in 2014 when I was in Delaware, being trained. And this was during the height of my drinking, so like I was really not depressed, but I was very depressed with how I had expected so much more from the military than I actually felt like I was getting at the time, because I expected a completely different chair force than what my parents joined. My parents joined the military that was very different. Hell, my grandfather joined the military that was very different from when I joined. So, I mean, it was just a letdown in a lot of ways, but I myself let the letdown affect me and rob me of the joy that I would have had I not had the expectations in the first place when I joined. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Again, though, the addiction kicked in to deal with it. But it was conflicting during this time with a sense of narrative that made me also realize, like, yeah, I'm drinking a lot every single day, including when I went to work. Military's not good with alcoholism. Be honest, I was drunk the entirety of my tech school. Like, the first half of tech school, fine. Shepherd Air Force Base down in Texas, you're gonna get away with it, fine. Delaware, I wasn't supposed to, but I did. And largely because the environment made it so that, like, as long as you didn't cause issues and you self-contain yourself, you were good. So as long as your suffering and your self-abuse is kept within yourself, you're fine. And that's what society teaches us. As long as your addiction stays with yourself and in your own sphere, you're good. But that's not the truth, and that's not the reality. The reality is that it even hurts you. It hurts you especially in those contexts, but it hurts society as well in those contexts. And that's where the confession element comes in. So I expose myself and the things that I go through because I know for a fact somebody else is going through it. More importantly, I have been silent for so long while people have killed themselves, when maybe I wouldn't have stopped them killing themselves, but I certainly could have offered to bring them over my house. I could have went for a walk with them. I could have read the Bible with them. I could have done so many things because of myself and what I tell myself. I never even tried. I deliberately have told myself they don't need it or they don't want it.
and then I watch as they disappear from ever from my life. First person, first two people that died in my life that really affected me. Found out about it in the same day, which was really fucked up. Found out that my first friend that I met in third grade, this was sixth grade. So this was during when I was really depressed and my parents were getting divorced too, so it really wasn't working out well that year. I found out my friend Zach, who I met at Dana Root. And Dana Root, like, Susan Elementary was a great school. I had a lot of friends there. I was fine. I went to Dana Root and instantly it just went to hell. Uh, for those 3 years that I was there till I went back to Susan Elementary for sixth grade, then it was just hell. So I went sixth grade, seventh grade, went to middle school. And my friend Zach, yeah, he died in a car accident. And I found out from another one of our classmates because we were reminiscing, and I was like, "Oh yeah, how is everybody?" And that really hurt because he was the. There were only two people who talked to me. Like, I had four friends for those 3 grades. Two of them ended up turning against me, and the other two I just couldn't hang out with because they were different tracks from me. But they never mistreated me, and they were always nice and kind to me. In fact, honestly, as far as tracks were concerned, red track's where it's at. I will always have respect for red track. Green track, screw them. They're full of assholes and dicks. Sorry. Reminiscing makes me angry. Mostly because I just buried it in really, really, really deep. And again, I've been sober for about good 2 weeks now. Like, not even like usually I'll have like one beer at least once a week. I'll have like one beer. I've been really trying to keep off of it because my stomach's so fucked up right now that it hurts. Like that's why I went to the ER. Oh wait, I actually didn't tell you guys. Went to the ER last week. Or did I tell you guys about that? Yeah, I went to the ER. It was all fragged. Um, whole body just not doing well because of earlier injuries, current injuries, health and stress and anxiety. Um, but yeah, lost Zach. And then I came home and I told my mother about it. And that's when, and I believe either Evan or Nick came home and they told me about what happened to Trevor. And he was riding his motorcycle. So, the first guy died in a car accident, him and his parent. The other one was riding his motorcycle with his father. Typical ride, they always would ride their motorcycles all the damn time over there by Davis, the Davis Walmart. In fact, if you see the cross, that's by the exit there. That's where he got hit. Smashed, instantly killed. I think I've told you guys before about Trevor. I'm not gonna say that he didn't deserve to die, because again, considering what's happened in the world since his death, I don't think that he had the heart to be able to bear what has come. But before, the prayer, the support that he had towards my brothers. Remember how I was telling you about Justin? Trevor was the first person who was ever like that. In my eyes, he, even though he wasn't cool, even though he wasn't swimming in bitches and money, he was a good person. And he was a good older brother. And he genuinely loved his friends. With every part of his being, he was a good person. And he was just gone. And it was the worst part is he was the first one to die. That's why I say it's probably for the best, because if he had watched what my brothers did among their generation, then they probably would have killed him inside to watch all his friends disappear. But he was the first Christian I've ever really respected. Him and his family I respected, and they were the first Christians I ever met and knew. So that was my experience with Christianity. Is the best Christian I knew died first. My brothers were lucky. Nick, he disassociated from most of the group first, so he just kind of stuck to his own. And when my parents got divorced, it was mostly just me and him at the house, while Evan was kind of in and out a lot because he was in his rebellious phase, and he just didn't. He's not my dad's son, so he was just constantly fighting with my father and in and out of my mom's house, and it was always a mess. So Nick and me would spend a lot of time with each other. Evan would spend a lot of time out with some of the kids on the block that were still around. But by then, I mean, shoot, Damien was always in and out of prison. So, I mean, it was normal for Damien to disappear for months, even years at a time. Watching Chad betray us, though, watching him get addicted to drugs and kind of go down the path of everybody else in his family, that was hard because he was only he was only like a year or two older than me. Like, he's not much older than me. He's in between me and Evan's age, and he looked up to Evan, and me and him often competed. Not because I wanted to, like, he was jealous of me because he wanted to be, he wanted to be Evan's right-hand man. For me, I was just like, I just want to do me. I'm the youngest. I don't care. But me and Evan were always really tight, and same thing with me and Nick. So it's like, if you want to be tight with my brothers, gotta get through me kind of thing, I guess. I don't know. I'm starting to forgive Chad for some of the shit that he's done to us. To the ones I love. Because he's still my brother. I hate how they betray each other. And it's the same thing, like, my brother Armando. He was a Sereno. And, they shot him and paralyzed him permanently. I think now he's started to be able to walk after many years. That was instant. Man who I used to always sit, literally, I would just go and sit in front of his house. Wait for him and Nick to get off school, because he was Nick's best friend. Wait for him and Nick to get off school, and if Nick didn't want to hang out with me, he'd hang out with me. He was just gone. The only person I talked to from my original neighborhood, unless I run into the guys from around the corner, like the other side of the neighborhood, are my godbrothers who were younger than me. And it was their parents who raised me when my parents were going through their troubles. And had it not been for them, I never would have chose to live a different life. It wouldn't have been a question of if I was in drugs or gangs. It just would have been a question of when. But Blanca was a really good mother, and she saw the pain that I was going through, and she always made it clear to me she did not want me to get involved in anything illegal. And she really took me, both her and Ruben, they both took me in and raised me as a son. And I was no longer the youngest because I was older than Pedro and Eileen, so I wasn't being told to hold off on stuff all the time. Instead, they were always asking me, like, hey, can you help out with stuff? And so that gave me a place to belong, to find a place to get centered, even though I was losing everything around me. When Gerardo and Pedro, especially Gerardo, when he really started getting into, like, gangs and drugs and stuff, that was when it was hard, because that caused conflict in that home, much in the same way it caused conflict for Evan and my family, and Nick and my family. And so I try really hard to talk to Gerardo and stuff, and there's been so many incidences that we would get into. Hell, I know for a fact I'm a ride or die, because I'll fucking almost get my ass kicked by a fucking gang just to go take care of the ones I love. Because I can't lose any more people. And without them, I would not be here. But when I go back home, It doesn't matter where I'm at now. One person looks at me and goes, "Hey, it's you! You look so good! Oh wow, are you still doing that thing? Oh, you still in the military? Oh man, we're so proud of you. Oh, you doing it. You made it out. You did this. You freaking made it." It means nothing. So every day, I exist knowing I'm more blessed than everyone else. And yet it means absolutely nothing to me. And so, I really medicate a lot of it down. And that's the thing. And this is why, in a lot of ways, I try to set this whole 2-hour bit. It wasn't meant to be 2 hours, but this whole stint about confession, talking about your addictions, talking about what you're going through. I can't talk about this stuff yet, even still. Yet I've thought nothing else for years. This is always what's on my mind. And it's hell. I'm absolutely exhausted, drained, tired. I know I said I was angry and resentful, but the thing is, the anger and resentment comes from this. Sobriety is like being choked to death. But it's still better to have fresh air in my lungs. The more the crap that I keep going back to. I know that the likelihood of me finding somebody that will be able to deal with what's going on in my head and the type of insecurities that I have in me, I don't think I'm going to run into that lady anytime soon. Trust me. I know plenty of people, especially Christians, who, you know, I'll get back to you guys in 5 years when I find somebody. But again, I can't return to porn just because I want to. Because porn is an easy way of dealing with the lack of intimacy and the lack of belonging that I feel, and it allows me to imagine that maybe perhaps there might be somebody out there who will actually let me close to them and not push me away, but actually say, "Holy crap, I think there's something in you that feels right, seems right, and I want to explore." Who would have thought that such a simple notion would be what causes a decade-long addiction? But honestly, if I really thought back to it, there was no sophistication of I could have a family or I'm gonna have 1,000 kids. That stuff couldn't even be figured out because I could barely give flowers to Billie Jean down the street without her punching me in the face or having her brother kick my ass. Because awkward dorky kid gave me flowers. So when I think about it, the root of it all really comes down to the desire to really just hey. And yet, because I feel like I can never have that in my life in any real meaningful way, that will not be immediately replaced by somebody else or a desire for somebody else, either myself or another. It's a mess. And it goes down to everything. Like, I'm so afraid of losing people. I never really would try to do anything that would allow me to offset what my friends want or what people would tell me is right. I always tried to please people my entire life. The only thing I don't do to please other people is binge drink, smoke, and do a crap ton of LSD. Those are for me. Makes me so happy. No, it doesn't. But that's how I escape. And the escapism is all you can do after a certain point. Again, going back to the idea. Relief, 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 relief. I need relief. Thus I go to the king, and I beseech the king, please, please relieve me.
And because God won't free me from this, I go to the world. Because the king of this world, he's got a solution. I bet he does. He has to have something. For God's sakes, let it be something. And so you go to the world, you go to the king of this world, and he offers you everything at a price. And you greedily accept it because you've been so famished, looking for any fucking thing, that you slop it down your damn gullet, and then you feel yourself twist, bubble. You start looking around and you realize everything's different. It's a different shade. Everything's a little bit darker, a little bit more twisted, a little bit more mangled. Even yourself, even your desires that were once so pure, now just have this tinge of anger and frustration, and resentment and nihilism that's infecting you whole until you have nothing less but the bottle and an empty pit to lie in. That is the death. That is the waking death that some people literally will kill themselves to avoid. I've been in that pit 3 times now. Deep, deep down. And every time it breaks my mind just a little bit more. Sorry. Very inappropriate. I know that's kind of gross, but otherwise, it's literally going to be dripping down my nose, so I'm sorry. I did not expect to cry, so nah. But again, and it's physically painful. Like, I don't know if this is because of the borderline issues or if that's just a part of the anxiety reaction, but physically and mentally it hurts to even talk about things. Imagine what it's like for so many people. Imagine what it's like for you guys. I don't freaking know. I'm just talking out loud, hoping that you guys can kind of understand, trying to give more details than are necessary, so hopefully you can really get a depth for what is inside the person as they stare at you and go, my day is good. I'm having an okay time. When silently inside their head they're going, ah! Freaking the hell out. It is hard. It's hard to be a Christian. And you're always going to have mistakes and flaws. And more importantly, the hardest decision to make is what happens when you have to leave everybody behind. If I could, I'd be right there with my mother, or if I had a better relationship with my father, telling them this, telling them what's on my heart. And trust me, I try. Oh boy, do I try. It's not like I'm ashamed to try to go and fix my family situations nowadays. It's just, it doesn't go the way you expect just because you think it's right or the most moral or the way of reclaiming what was lost. It doesn't mean it's going to work out easily, and that's what returns me to the bottle now. Because I want so badly to fix and to reclaim the things I've lost in my life that it's easier to give up and just return to the bottle and pretend that stuff never existed and was never meant for me. It's easier to give up and to believe that I don't date because I don't deserve to date because I've lost the validity of being dateable by just being who I am and not having everything together, and thus because I'm not mentally competent right now, and because I'm physically weak right now because of my injuries, and because I'm not working and I'm not fully confident in my ability to go to school right now, I don't deserve to have anybody. I deserve to just be alone during this period in my life. Because the opposite hurts too, to believe that during this moment what will help me get through this is to find somebody who will just support me and talk to me and give me good ideas or distractions that can help me not focus on myself so much and focus on the things that I've been dealing with for the last few years that are constantly weighing upon me. It's so much easier for me to listen to somebody else, be around somebody else, and just get off of me to the rest of my issues. Not that I don't consider them. Hell, half the time, if it's something really big, I go, hold on real quick. Okay. And then I put everything towards that. But again, the dealing with my crap and the handling of the weight usually comes because of the expectation that it's going to be replaced with something beautiful, something positive in my life. So it's harder for me to open up and even deal with the negativity unless I'm replacing it with something positive. And that's where the religion has really come to help me. But that didn't mean that the Christianity helped. And that's the thing.
When I met Katie, 2010, 2012 is when we started dating. I was probably fine for the first year. Maybe a few relapses in the porn and stuff like that. I was always smoking throughout that relationship. But as far as the smoking part of my addiction is concerned, I was fucking up for that the entire 4 years. Like, the best 4 years I had out of that was the 2 years that Katie looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not you when you're high and drunk all the time, and I really like being around you, but I do not like the person that you become when you're on this because you're just not you." And she got me in the rehab, got me clean. I was clean for 2 years, joined the military and everything. Whew, great. Then I started drinking in the military. It was downhill from there. It just only took a year for me to slowly get back to my old ways. The reason why, though, is because the religion that I found that allowed me to survive was not Christianity. It wasn't Christ that I found. I found the faith and the belief and the people in the kingdom of Christ. But I didn't find God. I didn't know who God was. He was not my God. He was my mother's God. He was my girlfriend or my wife's God, my fiance's God. He was the God who I honor and who I worship and respect. But he didn't have authority over my life. I agreed with him and stepped back and didn't want to interfere with his purposes. And you do you, I do me. Let's just not cross paths and mess with each other so much. I read Revelations. I know that the curse happens to those who screw up in Revelations. So I'm just going to stand back so I don't have any way of possibly cursing myself. That was the way I was in my ignorance. It literally took losing her and everything because of the sins and the addictions that I had. Because I could not give up porn. Because I could not give up my alcoholism and my drug addictions. And literally all three of them worked together. If it literally was a wave, like I'd go and smoke with my friends, then I'd get home alone, and if I didn't drink with my friends, like if I drank with my friends, I'd go home, go to sleep after watching porn. But if I just smoked with my friends, I came home, I drank, then I went to sleep, then I woke up and watched porn. Like that was my habit. It was and this is when I was in a relationship. So to me, when it finally fell apart and I was finally forced to deal with all these things, I finally really forced to realize how much this destroyed my life and my happiness and even my career. Because again, it wasn't like I couldn't get my crap together in the military. It's that I myself knew there is no feasible way I should be performing this well, doing this much work, and being relied upon this much when I go home and drink and watch porn for 8 hours as soon as I get off work. And I've had 12-hour days watching porn. I've had 15-hour days watching porn. It's pitifully destructive for your life to have that as a coping mechanism. More so than the alcohol and everything else. So, all that stuff hit me hard. And then I had to really look for that first year, finally being on my own, no home, can't go back to my family because we don't have a home. Don't have a career anymore because I finally freaked out hard enough on the military. I told them I wanted to leave, so I've been out processing for a couple months. Dude, it was hard. Nobody's calling me back. Nobody's trying to contact me. Everybody's a little bit off. Donald Trump's starting to run for election, so I'm starting to get politically active because something in me shifted at the time, and I felt like with all this service that I did on behalf of Obama, it feels wrong to not be involved in this political convention. And so I started looking at both sides, and ironically enough, the more I looked to the left, the more angrier I grew because I realized these are not people I support nor agree with any longer. I do not belong to the left anymore. I'm not a Democrat anymore. So all that stuff started coming out as I started to realize how much I had lied and compromised my entire life away just to have the semblance of normality. My entire lifetime wasted. Though I resisted these last 3 years at various points along this reformation and redemption path, I definitely know that I'm now starting to become a teenager and I'm no longer a child in the Lord. These 4 years have been very good apostling for me. But it's hard. It's hard to really come to terms with what this is going to mean for my walk here on out. Are people only going to follow me because I've been successful as a Christian? And thus, does it mean that I can only ever display the parts of my past that are beautiful and full of success and hope? Or am I going to be more beneficial for the kingdom by helping people cope with the things they can't change? The things that they want to change in the world that honestly they don't get the choice to change? The things that are forced upon them and they just have to be good servants with? I don't know. All God told me was just to speak. You guys act like it's supposed to be some overbearing, Colin, go and speak, and when you speak, they will say this, and you go and do this, and you do that, and when you do this, they'll do this, and then you bitch slap them. No. He literally just said, first, now you know how lonely I have been all of this time watching you all. That was his first revelation to me when he first physically interacted with me. I would say afterwards, it was just speak. Speak, instruct, learn. 3 very vague notions for me to spend the next 3 years trying to figure out. But I think I'm starting to. And it's moments like these and like the other videos that I make that I start realizing that so much of who I am existed within the cracks of these things that were forced upon me and that I was reacting to and that I chose to bring into my life and make into false idols. And even though they weren't my gods, they were certainly my familiars. Pornography became more of a spouse to me than my partner. Alcoholism became more of a best friend to me than even talking to my best friend. So much so that the only way I could feel comfortable talking to my best friend was when we were drunk. And honestly, when I started trying to not be drunk as much so I could talk to him, I found it became increasingly harder for me to talk to him. Now, at this point, I don't even have him. Literally, I'll be honest, I don't have any close people in my life that I feel like I can talk about these things. So it's easier for me to talk to a camera right now because it's not going to talk back to me. Tell me what I need to think, what I need to believe about it. Now, it doesn't mean you guys aren't allowed to comment. Comment all you guys want. Tell me what you guys want me to talk about. Help me formulate things so I can help you guys help me. Because this is part of how I maintain, hold on myself and accountability. You guys are my accountability partner. I don't have an accountability partner. I go to church. Doesn't mean the other Christians there aren't terrified of me because of literally the same reason why pagans are afraid of me. Pagans are terrified of me. Secularists are terrified of me. And religious are terrified of me. Why? Because I'm neurotic. And I literally put everything into what I'm interested in. So, among secular people, let's go talk about evolution. Oh, we weren't ready for that kind of conversation on it. I didn't think that you actually knew about Darwin's theory of evolution and that it's actually based off upon 3 other guys' theories of evolution. Nobody wants to get into these kind of things, but this is the kind of stuff I used to do because this was how me and my dad actually would talk to each other. For so long, we did not have any other way of interacting. So on top of me wanting to study so that I could actually feel like I could talk about something, then in order to feel like I had anything to talk about with my father, it was literally our shared interest in philosophy, physics, and the world. Literally, my father loved studying the world and every aspect of the world and civilization. Now, I'm not as preferential towards the world and civilization, but I love society and I love the idea of the human community. So it's not on the same level of my father, so that I'm not as interested in certain aspects of politics and military history as he is, but I have more of a sociologist bent. My father looks at it more from a like a pure psychology point of view, like systematized. Oh, this is stimulated by this interaction and this influence kind of thing. For me, I'm more sociological, and that tends to allow me to use metaphysics and metaphysical philosophies more to my thinking, rather than being purely rational. I can be a little bit dogmatic at times, and that's something I have to watch. But again, these developments, they came as a side effect. They weren't the norm. They weren't what was in me. And more importantly, if I continue to medicate or if I go back to my addiction, the better aspects of my trait that these things are leading me towards would be denied in me, and I would not become the person I'm supposed to be. when I think of myself, going back to the comparison of the tree and the seed, I know that God had immense plans for this seed that he planted in the dirt. And it's sprouting, it's growing, and the branches are thickening. But what fruit is it going to produce? And the thing is, if I focus only on where I came from and what God wanted me to be from that point on, that's not going to get me to where God needs me to be. Who I was with Katie was going to be a dope Colin, would have been a great Christian Colin, probably would have been a great teacher for all of you people to listen to. And honestly, I would have loved to have a conversation with the guy. But he would not have been the Colin that wants to get into politics, wants to create statecraft that is actually focused on helping the American people, and genuinely loves everyone in his life with a desire to see them prosper and be fruitful. The other Colin was perfectly just content doing him and having his own life and his own wife and screw everybody else. You all do you. How loving of a Christian would I have been? I wonder. It goes back to the same notion of what if I actually did work hard in school? I'm almost certain that the more worst aspects of my egotism and competitive nature would have actually been expressed and validated because I would have actually been successful at things that I put my mind to, which meant that I would have just been feeding myself into having a desire to always constantly pursue things that I could succeed at so that I can then lord it over other people so that I could then make myself as being the best, which is an aspect of my behavior I have to watch because having understood that that was the alternative to me deciding to instead be kind of a deadbeat with my whole grades and doing my homework and stuff. That was who I am. And now that I go back to college, the last thing I want to do with my life, I realize that that mentality I have developed as a kid, that hatred towards education and that hatred towards the idea of myself becoming an egotistical and competitive person over education, I have to work with that because I don't have a choice now. I have to go to school. I only have the Chapter 33 benefits for however long I wish to use them. And if I want my kids to be able to use them without me needing to intrude in them in order to provide for them to go to school, I should just go to school now. So, while before in my life I was perfectly content with marrying somebody, letting them use my benefits, and then I'll go and do it after I raise the kids a bit, instead, screw it. I know I'm already going to have kids later in my life. I'm going to focus on getting school done, do whatever it takes to get to that point, not try to work as hard as I used to because I devoted everything to my jobs beforehand. Jobs that honestly replaced me within a month. Spent years slaving away for these different people to be replaced within a month. In some cases, preferable. I would not have wanted them to have such a lengthy gap of employment because the things that I was doing in a lot of my jobs were vital things that needed somebody to do them, usually within a week, or somebody who gets sick and die. So, I mean, good that some of the jobs I left replaced me quickly, but for others, absolutely painful. I prided myself my entire life on proving my irreplaceability for being able to fight harder, last longer, do more, and think harder than everybody else around me. And that's where the competitive nature kicks in, because that nature that's always been innate to me and was a little bit expressed when I was competitive in school, usually during tests and certain things that I felt very confident being myself in and didn't require me to have to worry about public opinion. Well, yeah, I became competitive, and especially as I learned to not desire but also to accept the opinion that the public has of me now, it starts coming back in random doses, because to me, I have honored so many people as being more knowledgeable and wiser than me just by the virtue of me thinking higher of them because they're just around. So there are plenty of people who I conflict now on Facebook and who I don't agree with, and I seem like a huge asshole to them because I partially am. But it's not because I don't respect them or their minds. Now I don't, and a large part of my anger and my frustration and my criticism comes from the loss of respect that I suffer. Because there are so many people who I saw as geniuses, who I saw as absolute freaking whiz kids, who now I listen to, and I see them spill out the same crap that I know for a fact is wrong, because I had to learn the hard way. And then I realized, you guys know everything in a book, but nothing about reality in real life. Many people probably think that about me, ironically enough, because I'm reading a great book. But I don't see the evidence of it in my life. Yeah, I got nothing. Yeah, I'm not rich. Yeah, people laugh at me all the time. People don't take me seriously. That's on you guys. I put my heart into this stuff. Not as much as my heart as I could, because I'm a lazy sack of crap. I'm human. I have so many ambitions for what I want to do, and trust me, if I had a bunch of people kicking down my door and being like, Colin, you didn't release your video of the week, I probably would be making more videos. Hell, if people were kicking down my door saying, hey, Colin, we want you to go and, I don't know, go out mingling or something more often, probably would be using porn lefts and would probably be going out more of people to go meet people. You can always replace the negative things with better things in your life. More often than not, it's just we don't have the invitation to do so. That's ultimately where the confession comes in. And what you guys have been hearing is a pretty doozy of a series of confessions. But that's the point. I'm not asking you guys to do a 3-hour or 2-hour long confession conversation on the qualities of how sin has affected your life and how you view the world. But if you guys could even give 5 minutes to a random individual to tell them your struggle, tell them how you wish to know God more, tell them what you fear in the world and what kind of utopia you really want, I guarantee there's so much more in your life that you could find out about yourself and gain than continuing to hide it down as if it didn't exist. Again, most people feel like the greatest thing they could do is validating their sexual urges or validating their ideological expression of self into the environment by becoming the best, black fencer. What is the most human thing you can do? And I don't mean human in the, well, I'm an animal, I'm just gonna eat, sleep, fucking, blah. No, I mean, what's the most human thing you could do? As in, the most self-denying, self-actualizing, self-expressive thing you can do that no dolphin can do. I'm not a god among men. I'm not a king among men. Hell, I'm a pretty crappy servant. I'm a very small, insignificant, tiny, weak, pathetic, and prone to self-loathing man. And yet, that was never who I was. It's who I chose to be, because it was more easier to be that man than to realize the reason why I hurt so much, the reason why life feels so painful, is because I was never any of those things at all. And I was never meant to be. And instead, I'm addicted to being seen as less and self-sabotaging and not self-actualizing. I am more addicted to that than I am in being who Christ designed me to be. Now that I start seeing that, the level of spiritual warfare is changing. Devil can't get me in the usual ways, so now he's being pretty petty about it. Going at me through health, through disease, through attacking me physically, through getting me into accidents, having things hit me, having me crash into things, having me freaking get attacked by things. It's been a rough month. On the tail end of a rough year. On the tail end of a rough 4 years since my rebirth. I almost wonder what the next decade's going to be like. So that's my confession. I am hardly the shepherd that I wish I could be for you guys. And that is honestly why I have not been making videos. I'm ashamed of that, and I apologize for that. But I also don't, because I'm human. And I could only do so much as I could do. And I wasn't thinking about the struggles of the day being sufficient for the day. I was trying to fight wars within battles. Trying to decide the course of nations within every single insignificant resupply mission. I am vain, conceited, foolish, impatient, prone to neglect, prone to I already handled conceit. Prone to flights of fantasy. I mean, shoot, I could level on thousands of bad things about me, bad traits. I mean, shoot. Hey, Satan, you got any accusations? I bet you. Shut the fuck up. Never mind. That was a bad thing for me to do. I shouldn't even made a joke like that. It's like the second I started doing that, like 50 more ideas popped in my head. Oh, yeah, I guess I am a kind of a shit for that. And I kind of suck at that. And I am kind of cowardly. Again, don't. If you're struggling with the devil, just keep fighting him. I know it gets easier to want to be a smartass and sometimes to give in, but just keep fighting. It's. The curse of intellect is that it makes you way too close to him, which means the devil can speak to you in a way that, honestly, I think stupid people just won't have to worry about. I pray that you're stupider in your faith than me, because I think too much, and it allows the devil to fuck with me way too much. Again, part of the proving process, Paul had thorns in his mind for years, his whole life, till his head got chopped off, and if my head has to be chopped off for this stuff to stop, then, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I want to be. I want to finally get rid of it all. I don't want to have to fight this and have to question whether or not the Bible is another part of this. Whew, man, dude. Mental illness and Christianity is not a fun combination. Because again, love when people like to say all Christians are mentally ill. No, most Christians are not mentally ill. Trust me, most Christians are not mentally ill. The Christians who do have been afflicted and have been sinners and have dealt with a lot of crap to cause them to be broken in the mind, so that when they come back to Christianity, shit's not easy for them and the spiritual battles are different. So again, I'm not your role model. I'm not the person you hold up as a shining example of your people and the cream of the crop and everything great. I will always tell you people the truth. I will always try to read the Bible and try to keep it in context. I'll always try to do the best I can to honor Christ. But I'm human, and you guys cannot make me into something I am not. I will not let you all, and you all cannot let me. We serve Christ. We serve a God. Or you serve humanity and their God. Whatever. God, technically, Yahweh, is in control of humanity, but again, if you guys want to serve a lesser Lord, then fine, whatever. It's up to you guys. I like to serve the one true God, but hey, whatever. My God likes to get himself killed. So, I mean, to each their own. I'll stick with the guy who's self-sacrificing, you guys can go with the one who's self-expressing, I guess. Since self-expression is this end-all, be-all to today's society. I don't feel normal unless I cut off my penis! I don't feel normal unless I inject myself full of hormones. But I'm sick because I have an alcohol addiction and drugs and pornography as my problem. Now, all of it's the same level of horrible corruption. There's really no difference between sin. We decide which sin we preference as society. That's societal sin. The process of societal sin decides, okay, this sin's acceptable. This one we'll tolerate, though. Social construction. Creating social constructions to redefine what wasn't socially constructed but naturally derived into a social construction. Liberalism in a nutshell, and the progressive mentality dominating our current society. But anyways, for those of you who have been with us, those of you watching, I pray that you all are blessed tonight. And I don't know which of you guys are watching, but if you guys know me personally, then I hope we'll get in contact soon, especially with everything going on. And if you're people who I've hurt, I apologize. I've been struggling for the last year. And it's so much easier for me to run away, reject myself, and pretend like me trying to stick it through is going to hurt you all, than for me to step back and realize that this is why I'm here, is to make this stand. So I've abandoned some really good people that I love because I didn't know any other way to help them, and I felt like for me to stay was going to destroy them and what God could do in their life. And I really want God to be in people's lives more than me, because I don't know how long I'll be here. I really don't expect to be here long. I want to die old. I want to die old. I want to have a family more than you guys really know.
I've wanted that for longer than you guys know. But I don't think my path in life is going to be one that gives me exactly what I want. More importantly, I don't think anybody's going to let me live long enough to see the world I want to create. In fact, should God give me what I truly want, beyond just a family and place to belong, I'm almost certain they're going to kill me. Because nobody wants this society to become anything closer to what it should be. A place where people truly love each other. Actually want to belong with one another. Or one family, one tribe, one nation, under God indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I joined the military to fight for that. From threats, both foreign and domestic. I may not be able to fight the foreign threat. I may not be part of the military, but I will not cave to a domestic threat. Or a foreign threat, whether it's terrestrial or extraterrestrial, physical or metaphysical. Can't. It's not who I am. And I'm tired of not being who I am just to feel like I belong somewhere. Even with the church. So many Christians are terrified of me because I have no problem reading the Apocrypha while still staying completely firmly rooted in canon. I read the Apocrypha like you all watch Netflix. It's literal Netflix to me. It does not change history. I don't watch a Netflix show on the colony of Virginia's origins and then take that as the historical accuracy of the Virginia narrative. I'm able to divorce myself from that which may be manipulated and only used to help entertain men between that which is used to edify and teach men. But people are scared of that. People are scared of people who walk differently. I mean, shoot, I don't speak in tongues, but I might as well with half the things I say because I'm very nationalistic. I'm very, very populist because I don't believe America's doomed. America's not Babylon. Babylon was an empire. An empire that we see is the UN. So if you really want to get down to it, you can believe what you want. You can do what you want. But don't make claims about reality that aren't grounded in the Bible. The only thing we can really make claims of that we honestly want to even see met should be the claims of the Bible. Doesn't mean ignore science, ignore everything else. Take them in as a grain of salt they should be taken with because they'll change when human technology changes. But for the sake of what matters most, for your sake, your children's sake, for your fucking life's sake, for your soul, please find Christ. Find the real Christ. He may be in your church. I think for many he is. I think many people left the church before they actually had Jesus arrive in their life. But I do know that if you guys see Christ the way that I see him, in my best moments, you would see something more beautiful than clouds that break apart and form images and hues. If you ever watched a cloud disintegrate and then reform before your eyes, shifting shapes into a smile, that's kind of what it's like. Something so abstract and weird, yet real and there and apparent in your face. I remember when I first came to faith, I used to just stare at the freaking sun all the time. Not like literally in the sun, but like I just couldn't help it because anytime I would connect with God, I would, no matter how dark the room was, whatever ambient light was in that room would grow so much brighter. And it's like I would look into the clouds or at nature like a plant or something, and it would just open up to me and tell me its secrets. When I talk about going back to the mountain, that's what I meant. It was like God had opened up the entirety of heaven to me, and there was nothing I didn't understand. There was nothing I could not get. There was nothing There's nothing more beautiful than I have ever experienced. I chose to leave that. To go and live amongst the unsaved. And to try to bring God to them. To be a role model and example to them. That's what I was trying for fucking 3 years now. It's only in the last year that I gave up. Oh, I lost so much. I lost everyone I loved by then. In every way that I wanted to connect with them, I lost them. The only connections I have now are the trivial, the non-spiritual. I failed him. I failed the God who opened the whole world and gave me the one thing I wanted, which was answers. All I ever asked God was just for answers. I wanted to know the truth before I died. I just wanted to know the truth. And all the medication in the world couldn't prevent me from desiring to know the truth. All of my addictions, everything I've done, all the running, all the sacrifices to false gods I have made in my life, everything that's made me into the absolute wretch that I am. He just said, "Come unto me, my son, and let yourself be whole. Let me be with you, for I have always wanted to know you, and you have been kept from me for so long. And all I want is just to hold you in my arms again." Can't you guys see that's why I can't go back to being an agnostic? I can't go back to being an atheist after having the God of heaven say that to me, whether he's a lie or not. I don't care if it turns out that he was just some lesser deity. If what the God in the Bible has been saying and what I felt he had said to me from the context of the Bible and him appearing to me through these biblical revelations is real, then he's given me more than anybody else. He's actually stayed when nobody else would. He loved me when nobody else could, or even found anything to love. How could I betray him? Now of all times, how can I continue to want to fail him? How could I not want this world that is preached about in this book to be real? If even a fraction of what it does in my life has created so much joy that everything else I feel without him in my life and acknowledging him feels empty and dead and meaningless. That's my true confession. I can't be a non-Christian anymore. I will kill myself. I have to believe in Christ. And there is no going back at this point. That's my struggle. And for many, that's what it's like. So for us, our fundamentalism, the reason why we scream at you guys on the street corners, it's not for our own gratification. It's because we lead it when we say we want to die. We mean it when we say that we want to be away from this world if there is nothing else, that we don't want to even be here.
But if there is something else, then we will give everything in this shitty life to make it better for everybody else who doesn't believe in the next one. Does it make us more noble? We've just seen so much suffering and pain and loss and resentment and greed and oppression that we will do anything to leave this world a little bit less shittier to when we arrived. And that's the closest thing we could do to Christ-likeness for sinners like us. We rely on the 99% and those who can join the 99% easily. Because you guys are the ones that help us process our grief. You guys are the ones that help us accept our failures. You guys are the ones who help us feel like we've come home and that we're actually part of a body. Because I feel like an amputee. A spare limb just lost without a place in the body. I remember a time where I used to not be able to cry no matter how hard I'd force myself. That was a fun phase. Man, thank God I gotta do laundry today. Screw it, this is becoming a freaking towel. Ugh, I've become completely undisciplined and completely gross in my old age. Also, in my injuries. Like, seriously, talk to me like a year ago. I would have lost my mind if you thought that I would do something like this, blowing snot rockets and using my clothes freaking rags. Like, the one thing I did begrudgingly. Ugh. But yeah. I love you all. Though I don't know you. If you are here, then maybe we're all fellowshipping closer than I expect. But to be honest, like Jeremiah, I have no clue what the rest of you all are doing. In fact, like Jeremiah, if you guys watched my therapy video, like Jeremiah, I sit on the mountaintop and I scream at God, where are the others? I'm the only one, just kill me. And God's like, why would I do that? There's like 3 million of you. And I want to find you all. I want us all to be a family. I don't need to be anything more than the brother that I am. I am a bigger brother. That's a blessing, and I thank God for letting me be the bigger brother for others. But if I have to be the younger brother, then that's fine by me. Hopefully you're ready to be the big brother for me, to help me on my journey. Again, it's give and take. I'm not always going to be the older sibling. I'm not always going to be the younger sibling. Sometimes I'll just be a sibling. But we're all siblings in Christ, and we all need to help each other in times like these. Hell, with the COVID, you'd think that it'd be easier for us to do so, but we take it or leave it as we do. I said that this video wasn't going to be so long, and honestly, I guess this became more of a heart-to-heart than I thought. But, again, I think that this was probably a good way of making this a good transition video for what, honestly, I would like to be a new season in my life. I would like to start a new season in my life where I am reclaiming the things that I have resisted going near before. I go to church, I go to a small group, I do all that stuff, but I refuse to lead a small group. I refuse to see myself as somebody who can teach. I refuse to see myself as somebody who is able to interact with people and to spread the Christian journey. But to remedy that situation, on top of the endless amount of books that I constantly buy, read, and consume in order to help improve myself and constantly challenge myself, I've always had the 101 Psalms cards. But I made it a point to get different sets, specifically so that I can do different things with them. But also, primarily, because when I have people over or I have people who need to talk about God, I think it'd just be nice to have a way of being able to fellowship and mission to them without constantly hitting them over the head with the Bible. I mean, shoot. Us shepherds, we even have a freaking Messiah Corps that I'm trying to form. It's not that I'm lacking a wealth of ideas. It's not that I'm not working as hard as possible to try to figure out something. Heck, one of our brothers is actually trying to help me with a website if I could get my act together. It's not for a wealth of material, a wealth of teaching material, a wealth of freaking discipline. No, it's not even the lack of a freaking subject matter or even a freaking lesson plan. It's that I'm still immature, and also, I'm only one man. I'm literally only one person. I can't do it all. I certainly am no Moses. And even Moses had to be told to put crap down because he can't do it all. So, I'm not even on the level of half of the freaking forefathers and the apostles. Or four brothers and apostles, since technically everybody else calls them forefathers. I just call them four brothers. There is no father before you other than Christ. So, there is no forefather of our people. There is no for anything. There is no father of the church other than Christ. So, yeah, like, I'm just one man. How am I supposed to be the example for a whole nation on top of myself? Because I have to inspire myself, you know. It's not like I have somebody else walking the Christian path before me other than Sky Fairy. The Sky Fairy everybody tells me I'm insane for believing in and constantly does everything to shut me down or tell me, no, he's not working that way, or oh, he only works in this way. Oh, he won't help America. America's Babylon. Yeah, see, I'm not buying that crap. So again, it's like, how am I to be the end all be all for you all? I'm not. I'm not going to be. You have to do it yourself. You have to present yourself to Christ on your own. You have to climb on that cross on your own. The only thing that you get help from others is, hey, who's going to nail me into the cross? That's the only choice others are going to have to help you with. How are they going to nail you today? Oh, well, and I guess who's going to take the nails out? Oh, wait. They don't have the tools for it. Guess you gotta rely on Christ for that. Anyways, enough of my smart aleckness. Hopefully this wasn't so sacrilegious with all my cussing and conversation pieces. I at least try to say it wasn't for kids. If I say this video is for kids, then we're gonna stay as biblically based and as politically correct as possible. As far as I'm willing to stay politically correct for the sake of, you know, entertainment. Like, this cussing was more so for entertainment, more so just visualization purposes of just being open, free-form conversation piece. If I make the videos for kids, I'm going to try my best not to cuss, going to try my best not to be politically incorrect, and to try to at least stick to subjects that are educational and or informative and or reflective in nature. You know, content based off of criticism of different concepts and stuff. When it comes to these free-form things, they're not going to be for kids because, again, I'm talking to you all like adults. Because I'm a kid trying to become an adult. I don't need you all talking to me like children. We need to deal with this as adult Christians before an adult Christ. And an adult faith with an adult purpose in this world. Again, children don't have children. Children don't have to shore up resources in this earth. And so long as we remain children, that's fine. God tells us there's time to be children. But I don't think he went to Israel and told them, yeah, you guys just need to act like children your whole life. He said, be my children your whole nation's existence. He didn't say act like children for your whole nation's existence and just do whatever the hell you want. America's doing whatever the hell it wants. Are you going to help encourage that? Or are you going to realize that you doing whatever the hell you want never helped? You satisfying every addictive quality in your life isn't helping. You doing things on your own is not helping and you trying to do things just to get people to help you and accept you doesn't do the trick either. There's only one way, and it's not through society, it's not through the self, it is only up, directly up to Christ. And how he comes down to dwell in you, to renew and restore and set you on a whole new path. Find that path, embrace that path, do not let it go. Do not let it go. There's nothing more pure and great in life than having something that's truly yours, that nobody can touch, and then knowing that that is the God in heaven. The no word these people say that just subtracts from what you've read in the Word of God and have had the Word of God say directly and declare to your heart and mind and spirit and body, every essence of you, that know for a fact when people speak, you know in an instant with discernment that they are misattributing and lying about the nature and quality of your God. That's a good state to be in. Now, I know that scares some people. Oh, he's trying to get everybody to be fundamentalists. Ah! I'd rather have a world full of fundamentalists that actually are trying to be real Christians than a series of mock Christians who just want to be Christian because, hey, it's just nice to be nice. Lots of people are nice to be nice until food's missing, and then you guys are punching people in Walmart and buying out everything, right? But again, I actually think the Christians have been faring pretty well during this. I don't know if that's going to bite us back in the butt later on, but, jealousy abounds in the unsaved world, and they will see how we are blessed while they aren't, and we will get stomped on when it comes time for it. The end times come when the end times come. Hopefully my children will be prepared for it. Hopefully I'll be prepared for it. Hopefully none of us will have to go through it, and hopefully they'll all just convert, and we won't have to deal with this nonsense. I mean, again, is it so impossible that maybe the millennium of God's reign on earth couldn't possibly happen? The only reason why I don't think it would happen is just because there's no evidence in the Bible that it would happen the way that it said so. He said he's coming in the clouds like when he left, and that when he comes, it'll be an instant, and we'll all be translated in an instant. There will be no secret taking away of people and stuff. The taking away comes through the diseases, the purges, the end times. We die during the end times. We get taken out during the spiritual attacks and the physical attacks of the end times. Now, a lot of us might get snuffed out in the middle of the night, but I don't think people are just going to be standing there talking to me like, hey, Colin, how's it going? Hey, blah-blah-blah-blah-blah-blah, blah-blah-blah-blah-blah, blah-blah-blah-blah-blah-blah, blah-blah-blah. Colin? Colin? Colin! Where are you? Where are you, Colin? He's disappeared. Oh gosh, where is he? He used to be here. Now he's gone. No. I don't think you're gonna be talking to John one day and then he just disappeared out of nowhere, out from underneath your sight. An instant's all secret. Christ very specifically said, people who say that I appeared in a secret place, that I'm in here, that I'm hiding in cover, that I'm doing all these mysterious things in the dark. No. God doesn't do anything in the dark. Now, he employs those who work through not constantly exposing themselves. So he uses secret ways. He has his methods. He has his hidden agendas, his own plans. But they are never that which he hides to manipulate or to mislead people. He does not mislead. He does not manipulate. That is the way of the enemy. So if God has something planned, it is for the purpose of light. It is the purpose of life. It is for the purpose of bringing you revelation, truth, mercy, grace, and redemption into every aspect of your life, every aspect of your environment, every aspect of your mindset. So be renewed fully. Be made whole. And next time, I'm going to try to read the Bible. I'm still getting used to this whole format thing, and honestly, it just feels weird interacting on a third-party software to just run a webcam. I tried setting up my camera, but apparently the HDMI cable doesn't work on my main camera, so I can't just use that to film things. So I'm going to start making videos using my actual camera and trying to make, I'm not going to say it's film quality, but I'm going to start making really dumb, okay, it's not going to be dumb. This is me being self-deprecating because I don't like thinking about myself being successful, because then if I fail, I'll
hit myself harder. I would like to start making trailers and videos specifically for marketing both this channel and also the Messiah Core that I want to create. But I also want to create kind of gag videos. They're not so much gags, but they're like serious in that we're talking about subject matter that's serious, and I will give you guys very valuable information both from the secular, pagan, and Christian world. But there are going to be things like how to build an altar that I want to make. There's going to be things like how to consecrate land. Things that, honestly, yeah, kind of can't really make a tutorial video about. But at the same time, if you could, what would it look like even if it looks ridiculous? So, I have a character that I've created that I feel is sanctified to at least be able to be performed on camera in a way that I feel like would not be a manipulation of my role as a shepherd and my role as a pastor, even if I don't have that official title. Even just as a minister, which I actually do have the title of a minister. I could be a minister. If a congregation wants me to be, I could be a minister and lead a small group. So at least I could do that much. So on that level of self, I have a code of ethics that I'm trying to slowly integrate into my personality. It's a very robust one that goes through every system of society. I think that this character reflects that calling. And as far as a role model goes, when you guys see him, he'll look ridiculous. He'll be in a wig. But again, the purpose is to try to, even if it's a little bit theatrical, to try to make it as clear as possible the intention and the purpose for what these things are for, what they're standing in for, and really what I'm trying to get across for why it's important in your life to do it, even if you're not doing exactly what I'm doing. Again, I don't expect you guys to build altars in your backyard. But I would like to show you guys what an altar could look like if you just wanted to do something or anything different while you're locked in your house and you can't go to church to celebrate God. And so, hey, let's just figure out other ways of being able to do it. And I'll basically go like, this is how you build it. Let's just do a quick rough draft design. Here's how you quickly make one for under $20. And here's the design. And here's the possible uses of it. Because what I use mock altars for, whether it's a jimmy together one or one that's just reutilizing something that natively exists in my environment like a fireplace, what I will do is I write prayers. Heck, depending on how fancy you want to get with it, more so how sanctified you want to get with it. Fancy is just a nice way of saying how much time you devote into consecrating this act so that it's completely devoted to God. How much do you want to add a fine bow to it? But one of the things I was thinking is that, I write prayers and then I burn them in order to kind of release it, because again, what you burn releases incense and is pleasing smell to God. So again, I like to modify my paper. I'll take computer paper, soak it in coffee, sit there and smother in a bunch of herbs and scented perfumes and stuff, then take a bit of ash, write a prayer out, or write what I'm sinning or what I'm struggling with, burn it, give it up to God. So those are the kind of things that I'm going to try to do. Heck, to a certain extent, I even want to try to address the issue of magic and the issue of paganism in society by offering the alternative, which would be a robust, not Christian paganism, not Christian magic, which, again, there is a form of magic which people call Christian magic, still just as abusive as the other one. There's a difference between taking creation and the spirit of God that maintains creation and siphoning from that, putting that into a battery, and then repurposing that to then exert will and force through the environment against and out of its temporal and causal relationship. And then there is working with creation, with the Spirit of God, working through His purposes and through His ordained gifts that He has bestowed upon all of us, to use His gifts to actuate into the environment and to cause the environment to respond in a way that helps it actualize its true nature. Because just like how we have a true image that God has created, everything in your environment, in your life, has a true image that you can force it. Well, you can't force it, but that through the power of Christ, it can be forced to come into alignment with. Therein lies the key. So again, one of the things that was interesting is like the idea of being a warlock. Well, warlock,
from these sources, we're talking about how it's based around the concept of you are one who is constantly in a state of war and warship. You're literally a holy warrior if you're a warlock. It's just you're a holy warrior for the wrong side. You wish to manipulate, abuse, and to take from creation. But again, by the very same logic, most Christians are warlocks because we utilize metaphysical means to fight against supernatural powers and physical powers. So we fight against both the natural and the spiritual using supernatural gifts bestowed upon us by a Holy Spirit that created everything in the known universe and sustains it and acts as a restrainer from worse things appearing in this world. Sounds pretty warlock-like to me. Sounds like we're waving some pretty hardcore magic. If magic was only used to define that which it actually comes from. But magic as we know it now is not used to define where it came from. It's used to define the mass-produced means by which society uses this development. Don't want to say technology, but honestly, technology is the same. The copper, steel, silver, and gold that's inside of your computer are literally everything that they use to create their Baal statues. And all of their statues to Marduk, and all of their statues to every other god and goddesses. The only thing that most of us don't utilize is clay. Ha. Go figure, the thing that represents man too. We don't use to build our gods out of anymore. Almost as if we're done looking to the frail and the breakable and the man in us, and we only want to focus on those qualities of man which can be refined and augmented into an artificial sterility we call technological advancement. Anyways, before I sound like any more of a anti-robotic conspiracy nut, I hope you all are safe. And I hope you guys are doing well with the COVID, and I hope you all are blessed. Good night. Father God, watch over us all. Put your spirit upon those who are listening and those who hear this. Those who have gotten this far and those who have left. Watch over them, guide them, and help them know you. Not as I know you, Lord. Not just as I know you, at least. But let them know you in the way that you want them to know you, and in a way that allows them to know you are their God, and you are there for them, and that you love them in a way that the enemy and the world never could, and never could even begin to help them understand. For in the world, these people do not know what they're missing. And when they're unsaved or rebellious, they don't have the means to appreciate you, Lord. So help them, give them grace and mercy, and watch over your children, and help us retake our nation so we have a bastion to worship you from within. Do not let us go the way of Babylon and Nineveh after they failed to continue their repentance, but instead, let us hear this sign of Jonah and repent, put on our sackcloths, rend our garments, belittle ourselves to the humble state of laying upon the floor prostrate, begging for you to come back, to forgive us and to turn your eye for another time. But again, I'm okay if you don't turn your eyes away from us. Sometimes you have to watch the train wreck. And if so, I couldn't have picked a better God to watch. Because at least you won't sit there and be glad, or just let us uselessly dissolve into nothingness. You're not the kind that lets people get snuffed out and go quietly into the good night. You're the one who inspires people to write stories about how we don't go quietly into the good night. So yeah, I know you have something for us in these dark times, and we will overcome. Stay blessed, shepherds.